My husband, Ethan, arrived just as I was finishing giving birth to our daughter. We were all holding the baby. The doctor smiled big and tried to pass the baby to Ethan. "She's so full of energy, she's your beautiful daughter," the doctor said. But Ethan replied, "Do a DNA test on her," with a serious face. "Sorry, what?" the doctor asked. Everyone in the room went quiet when they heard what Ethan said. I was too tired from giving birth to speak. I could only watch and wonder what Ethan would say next. Then Ethan shocked everyone by saying, "There's a chance this baby isn't mine. My name is Emma, I'm 28, and I work in an office. I married my husband, Ethan, 3 years ago. We met at a party. Ethan was kind, a true gentleman, and really social. I liked him right away. We went on a lot of dates, became a couple, and after a while, we got married. We were happy together, sharing chores and supporting each other. We had small arguments now and then, but nothing serious. We had talked about having kids someday, but we wanted to enjoy our time as newlyweds first, so we didn't focus on starting a family right away. When we hit our 3rd year of marriage, Ethan's parents started talking about how badly they wanted grandkids. Ethan and I talked about it and decided to try for a baby. At first, I wasn't sure it would happen, but after doing a lot of research and trying some things, I finally got pregnant. Ethan was so happy when I told him. Since it was my first pregnancy, I felt nervous and unsure. I often asked my cousin, Alex, and his wife, Rachel, for advice. Alex and Rachel were very helpful since they had kids of their own. As my belly grew, it got harder to move around. Morning sickness was really bad, and I didn't feel well. I wanted Ethan's help, but he started getting busier at work. He came home late each day and started blaming me for not doing the housework when I couldn't. "Why isn't dinner ready?" he asked one night. "I'm sorry," I said. "The morning sickness is making me feel awful," I explained. "So that's why you've been lying on the couch all day? Are you taking advantage of being pregnant?" he asked. "Excuse me?" I replied, shocked. "I come home tired, but you're just relaxing at home all day. You even took maternity leave to do nothing. It's embarrassing." "What?" I said, confused. Ethan didn't understand why I had to take time off, because I wasn't feeling well. Maybe his job was stressing him out, but what I was going through wasn't easy either. It was tough for me to go grocery shopping and do housework while I was feeling so sick. But since my husband, Ethan, was blaming me, I felt like I had to do something about it. Both my parents had passed away, so I couldn't rely on them for help. I didn't think it was right to ask Ethan's parents either. So, I thought about my cousin, Alex, and his wife, Rachel. Alex works from home, and his schedule is flexible, so he has more free time. Since Rachel was home with him, I asked if they could help me out sometimes. They both agreed and started coming over when I was having a hard time with morning sickness. They went grocery shopping with me, helped clean the house, and even cooked dinner for me. They shared their experiences with pregnancy and raising kids, which I really appreciated. It made things so much easier. Ethan didn't seem to mind since the house was clean, and dinner was ready on time. But I had a lot of complaints. Not only was Ethan working late more often, but he even started working on his days off. One day, I complained to him about how busy he was. "Can't you cut back a little on your work? I really need you here with me while I'm struggling with the pregnancy." When I said this, Ethan seemed annoyed and disgusted. "I'm working hard for our baby, and now you're saying you don't want me to work?" he snapped. "That's not what I mean," I said. "I just wish you'd spend more time at home. Don't you think you're being selfish? You need to understand what I'm going through," Ethan said, then walked off to his room. I started to worry. Was it okay for us to be misunderstanding each other with the baby coming soon? Would Ethan really love our baby? I felt so anxious that I turned to Alex and Rachel for advice. They both said Ethan's words were too harsh, but they reassured me that they thought Ethan would love the baby once she was born. I just hoped that Ethan would raise our baby the right way. As my due date got closer, my husband never seemed to worry about me. When I told him I was going to give birth soon, he said, "Just remind me when the baby's about to arrive." My cousin Alex and his wife, Rachel, tried to encourage me, but I was still really nervous. A few days later, my contractions started, and I went to the clinic. Alex and Rachel already had plans that day, so I called my in-laws and asked them to come over. My father-in-law, Bob, drove me to the clinic. When we got there, the The staff told us to go straight to the delivery room. It was time to begin. The birth wasn't easy, and it took longer than I expected. But because of the delay, Ethan was able to rush over after work and arrived just as I was finishing giving birth to our daughter. We were all holding the baby when the doctor, smiling, tried to hand her to Ethan. "The baby's full of energy, she's your adorable daughter," the doctor said. But Ethan replied, "Do a DNA test on her," with a serious look on his face. "Sorry, what?" the doctor asked. Everyone in the room froze when they heard what Ethan said. I couldn't believe what he was saying. Ethan's strange demand made both his parents panic. "Liam, what are you saying? The baby's just born, and you're asking for a DNA test? What's wrong with you?" I was too tired from giving birth to speak properly. I could only watch and wait to see what Ethan would say next. Then Ethan shocked everyone by saying, "There's a chance this baby isn't mine." Everyone froze again in disbelief. I was spinning with confusion, but I managed to say, "Why would you say that? She's your daughter." Ethan looked at me coldly and said he thought I'd been having an affair. "So, we should at least find out who the real father is. Let's do a DNA test," he said. The doctor, looking confused, replied, "But you need your wife's permission for that." Ethan sighed and said, "I bet she'll say no to the test. She always makes things difficult." The way he said that made me furious. "Fine, I'm innocent. I don't know why you're suspecting me, but if you want to investigate, then go ahead," I said, my frustration taking over. That moment wiped away the exhaustion I'd felt earlier. I glared at Ethan as I spoke, and he replied, "Well, don't mind if I do," before walking out of the room. After he left, the room felt awkward. My in-laws probably believed me, but they didn't seem fully convinced either. The doctor didn't seem too concerned. It looked like this kind of thing happened often. What shocked me most was that Ethan didn't even look at our baby, let alone hold her. No matter how much he doubted me, how could he not be interested in his own child? At that moment, I decided that if the DNA results cleared me, I would confront Ethan and demand an explanation. Depending on what he said, I might even consider divorce. I was on maternity leave, but once I went back to work, I could support my daughter as a single mom. So, I didn't care if divorce was the result. After that, I did the DNA test my husband, Ethan, had asked for and waited for the results. On the day we were supposed to get the results, Ethan seemed strangely confident. How could he look so sure of himself? When the doctor came in with the report, he said, "I will now share the results. This child is not your biological child." My mind went blank. What was going on? I hadn't cheated on Ethan. Ethan grinned and said, "See, I knew it. You're the worst. Emma, you tried to get me to raise a child you had from an affair, but you couldn't fool me. I'm divorcing you and making you pay alimony. You'll pay for this." With that, Ethan started to leave the room. I was in shock. Was this a nightmare? How could this happen? But then the doctor spoke again, but everyone turned to look at him. "The report seems to be fake." "What?" I said, confused. Ethan, who had stopped in his tracks, looked shocked. "Fake? What are you talking about?" Ethan asked, clearly upset. The doctor looked straight at Ethan and said, "I know you have a friend at the lab where you ordered the DNA test." Ethan's eyes widened. "That's why I suspected the results might be fake. So, I had another private lab do the test. The results confirm that you are the biological father of your daughter." "So, the original results were fake?" the doctor asked. No way, I didn't fake anything," Ethan stammered, sweating. The doctor replied, "There's no point denying it. I have a friend at the same lab, and I had him investigate. Your friend admitted he took money from you to create false results. Why did you do this to Emma?" Ethan, now panicking, couldn't stop sweating. Just then, Alex and Rachel came into the room. "What's going on?" Alex asked. "We were suspicious about what you said about Ethan," Rachel added. "Huh? What do you mean?" I asked. "Rachel's friend is an investigator, so we asked them to look into Ethan. Turns out your husband has been having an affair. We even have proof," Alex said, handing me photos. "What?" I gasped. So, Ethan was the one who had been cheating on me all along. At this point, Ethan's face was completely pale. "Why is everyone investigating me?" Ethan asked. Ryan surprised everyone as he stood in front of Ethan. "You really are the worst. Your lover is the daughter of the president of a big company, and it looks like you're planning to marry her. So, You were planning to leave Emma and be with your lover, right? What? You even investigated that much about me? Ethan stammered. Hey, Ethan, is that true? I asked, furious. No, he tried to deny it. Ryan continued, you can't get away with this. It turns out your lover didn't know you were married, so we told her. Now you must be in big trouble since you lied to the daughter of a major company. No way, Ethan muttered, looking defeated. You're the worst, Ethan. You tried to accuse me of cheating, but all along, you were just trying to make yourself happy, I shouted. As you wish, I'll divorce you gladly, but I will make sure you pay alimony and child support. Hearing this, Ethan collapsed to his knees. Ethan lost his job soon after. His lover was furious when she found out he was married and had lied to her. Her father personally called the president of Ethan's company, leading to his termination. I successfully divorced Ethan. Alimony was paid right away, but Ethan could only pay child support in installments. If he was late, my lawyer contacted him immediately. As a result of this, Ethan was cut off by his parents. Now, he can't find a new job because he offended the president of a major company. He's working a low-paying part-time job to pay off his debts, living a poor life all alone. It's all his fault, and honestly, it feels good to see him like this. Meanwhile, I was safely discharged from the hospital, curious about why the doctor had been so supportive. I asked him before leaving the clinic. The doctor said something I didn't expect. At first, I didn't recognize your name because it had changed, but your father was my mentor. What? I asked, surprised. When I was in high school and unsure about my future, your father, who was my teacher, gave me advice and support. Because of him, I was able to work hard and get into medical school. I'm forever grateful to him, so I wanted to help you however I could. Wow, I see. Thank you so much. I don't know what I would have done without you, doctor. I thanked him, and he said I could call him anytime. Later, I visited Ryan and Rachel to thank them, too. Without them, I never would have found out about Ethan's affair. I've realized that I'm able to live a good life because of the support of so many people. Now, I will live my life helping others, just as they helped me. But first, I'll take great care of my beautiful, lovable daughter. There's no way I'd ever fake a DNA test. It's disgusting that Ethan did it just to try to have a better life with his rich lover. I hope Ethan hits rock bottom. And I hope Emma lives happily with her daughter, grateful for the people who supported her. Thank you for watching until the end. Please subscribe to our channel. We hope to see you in the next video.
This is the last present I will ever give you. My husband shoves divorce papers to me. I've decided to marry someone else. So thank you for being a cash dispenser until now. The guy I have been with for so many years turns out to be a horrible person. This is a story of my revenge. My name is Jessica. I'm turning 50 this year. In fact, tomorrow is a little special day. I'll be living in debt for a long time and will finally finish paying it off. My husband Lance and I have worked really hard together. We got married 20 years ago. I was 30 and he was 35. He ran a liquor store that he inherited from his parents who had passed away. I, on the other hand, was an office worker. We met through an acquaintance and started dating with marriage in mind. I had one concern back then. What if he asked me to run the store with him? I was working as a financial consultant who advised on insurance and investment to individual and corporate clients at the time. I was getting paid better than average 30-year-olds and loved my job. I was studying for certification to take my career to the next level when he proposed to me. He said, "I know you have been working hard to get the certification. I want to support you in any way I can. I have enough staff at the store so I can manage it myself. You should pursue your dreams." His assurance was a catalyst for my decision to marry him. He was benevolent and always on my side. I truly wanted to build a life with such a man. As we agreed in the beginning, he focused on his business, and I focused on my work. We thought that our marriage was going well. About a year into it, he went to work, and I was spending my day off at home. When I was vacuuming under the bed, it caught a lot of papers. It had been less than 6 months since we moved in. I wondered why there was such clutter. I picked up a crumpled piece of paper and opened it. The header in bold letters jumped into my eyes. Reminder of payment. The total amount of the debt under Lance's name was $200,000. 200,000 was not 2,000, is it? My head started spinning. Why did he hide such a large amount of debt from me? I questioned him as soon as he got home that day. What is this debt? What's going on? No, it's not what you think. It was left to me by my parents. That was not a personal debt, but rather on his liquor store. It was made by his parents, and when he took over the business, it also came along. It was secured by the land and the house we lived in, so he had no intention to renounce the inheritance. I understood that it was not his personal debt, but it was not something that could be left unattended. But this is a payment reminder. Aren't you paying back every month? I am. But sales fluctuate from month to month. Sometimes I can't pay them back during the slow month. I have to pay my staff first, so I've asked them to wait. That's when the letter came. At first, his explanation sounded to make sense, but it was definitely not a good idea to delay payment. The letter included the words "final notice." I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to freak out. Don't worry though. Business is on track, and we haven't been evicted from the house, right? That's true, but... I looked at him anxiously. Then he mentioned something unexpected. If you're so worried, why don't you help me pay it off? You are making quite a lot, aren't you? I wasn't comfortable with where he was going. It was not my store, and a husband and a wife were supposed to help each other. My debt is also yours. That's a bit sudden. Are you okay if my store went out of business? Many people would suffer if it was gone, you know. I guess he was right. His store had become an indispensable part of the community. It was located in the suburbs where there weren't many shops or supermarkets around. He was also selling fresh foods such as meat and fish and offered a home delivery service. I visited the shop several times, and it was always busy. Some customers stated that they were so grateful to have it in the neighborhood. Please, honey, I'll be focused on keeping my business rolling. Please help me pay off my debts. I respected the way he took his work seriously and devoted himself. I didn't want to see his store disappear. I didn't want that to happen for sure. Being married means that we support each other at all times. If you were struggling, it seems only natural for me to help him. Okay, I'll repay back as much as I can every month from my salary. You can concentrate on managing the store. I could help financially, but only he could run it. I was happy that he relied on me above all else. However, it was the beginning of a change in him. About 3 years had passed since I took over his debt. He often came home late. What were you doing until this late? You reek of alcohol. I just had a few drinks with my customers, honey. Did you make a payment this month? For some reason, he sounded condescending. I did last week. Why? The store depends on you. You'd better keep paying on time. Whenever he got drunk those days, he gave me an order. I had taken it as nonsense from a drunkard, but it started to prick my nerves when he did it repeatedly. He made it sound like it was normal for me to pay back his debt. By the way, Matt has a third kid now. I envy him. Matt was his friend from high school. He had his own business, just like Lance. His wife also worked in the store with him. I've been wanting to talk to you about that. I told him what I had been keeping to myself. Don't you think it's time for us to start a family? His reaction was very cold. What? Baby? My business has just started picking up, and we are still in debt. How can we be so irresponsible? That was his stance. I held back my annoyance. Matt has 3 children now, right? We can manage one too. His parents are still well, and his wife works in the store. They are different from us. I couldn't counter that. I'd always thought that I would have children when I got married. My dream was crushed easily, so until I paid off all your debts, we can't have a baby. Well, I guess that's how it's going to be. If you make a lot of money and pay off studies quickly, I will think about it. His mean smile disgusted me, but I felt impatient to pay off the debts as soon as possible. How blind I was. Even though it was an irrational demand, I was still occupied with the thought of starting a family and didn't even think about it. From then on, I worked tirelessly for Lance. I actively obtained qualifications, took promotional exams, and secured a salary increase. I started earning much more than women my age. I even made advance payments, but the debt didn't disappear so easily. I turned 40 before I knew it and had to give up on having children. I thought to myself that I still had my husband and thought he was enough. He relied on me, and I could do anything for him. As long as I still believed that, I remained happy. Lance started coming home later and later as the days went by. He sometimes came back in the morning. I was working in the store, and it was morning when I realized it. I had to go out with a customer, and the next thing I knew, the sun was out. When I saw him working so hard to protect the store, I felt that I had to do my best as a wife too. We were on the same boat, sailing for a better future together. The months and years went by, and the day finally arrived. I was going to make the last payment the next day. For the sake of the debt, I had to pass on all sorts of luxuries. I didn't need to do so anymore. I could finally spend my hard-earned money the way I wanted. I realized that ever since I got married, I had been thinking too much about money. We had never taken a vacation or even dined at a nice restaurant. We were still in our 50s. I hoped to finally enjoy such things from then on. On the day the last payment was due, I took a day off. I prepared a more opulent dinner than usual, complete with a bottle of wine and Lance's favorite chocolate cake, intending to celebrate a debt-free life together. When he returned from work, I laid everything out on the table, remarking, "Finally, it feels like it's been a long time. But the last 20 years have gone by so fast, haven't they, honey?" His trembling and lowered head made me wonder if he was crying from happiness. However, to my shock, he burst into laughter in a way I had never heard before. "What the hell is going on? Are you okay?" My supposed husband declared something outrageous. "You are dismissed now. I'm grateful to you for the past 20 years. Thanks to you paying off all my debt, I'm a free man. Great job. I don't need you anymore." "What are you talking about?" I genuinely had no clue. He pulled out something from his bag. "This is my last present to you." Bold letters of a divorce petition stabbed my eyes. Proudly, he continued, "I've decided to marry someone else, so you are no longer of any use to me. Thanks for being my cash dispenser until now. You're getting remarried? Have you been cheating on me all this time?" I recalled his habitual late returns, citing work or socializing. While I toiled to pay off his debt, he was nowhere to be found. His expression remained smug. "I will never read that unfaithful. I have already found the next potential wife. I want to divorce you and marry her. That's why I have been waiting for you to clear my debt." Tears welled up at the absurdity. The feast I had prepared blurred before my saddened eyes. "Get the hell out of here." He handed me the divorce papers. My blood boiled faster than I could feel sadness or despair. "Okay, but you won't regret it." I forced out my voice. "No, I won't. Why would I regret divorcing an old hag like you?" "Old hag?" If I were her, he would be an old fart. Did he think he was still young? His misconception was so ridiculous that I regained composure and accepted the divorce papers. "I'm going to take this with me for now, and I'll be in touch." I packed my belongings and left the house. How could my 20 years of marriage come to such an easy end? Finally alone, I shed tears of emptiness and frustration. Later, I asked my attorney for a divorce agreement, sending it to Lance. I also requested a background report on his bride-to-be. Shortly after, he called me. "Hey Jessica, what the hell is this document?" He sounded furious. I could imagine his face turning bright red even over the phone. Contrasting his fury, I remained calm. "That is a divorce agreement. What about it?" "I know what it is. What I'm talking about is this loan agreement. Why do I have to pay you back?" He sounded distraught, yelling, "This is crazy. This is not right." Referring to the repayment of the loan between spouses during the marriage, he protested against returning the money I paid on his behalf. "This is ridiculous. You decided to do it out of your goodwill, didn't you? Why are you digging up the past?" "What do you mean? I did it as your wife. If we divorce, that's a different story." Regret hit him. He just realized it. When he asked for a divorce, I immediately thought of making him repay my head. My profession involved dealings with insurance and investments, giving me contacts with experienced attorneys. I consulted them right away. The total, including interest, was a little over $300,000. I was determined to have him pay me back precisely that. That was all I asked for. He grasped the seriousness, seeing the name of a locally famous attorney on the document. Ludicrously, he said, "You know that I don't have much money. Sell the store to fund it then. If I do that, I won't have anything left. You're only 55. You could still find a job if you wanted to. Give me a break." The conversation made no sense. I wanted to hang up, but there was one last thing to check. "How's it going with your new bride-to-be?" "None of your business." I burst out in laughter. It seemed like he was going through a lot. "Good luck." I was about to hang up. "Wait a minute. I've decided not to marry her. We can start over." For some reason, he pleaded with me. I yelled my last words and hung up. "Start over? Don't kid yourself. I don't want you. I had been married to such a man for 20 years. Did I look more ridiculous than him in the eyes of others? I respected him until the divorce. I had watched him work hard for the store and his customers. 20 years later, I realized he was just a fool. The mentioned remarriage started with innocent flirtation with a part-time university student, Melissa. "You are so cute, Melissa. Will you be my wife?" She played along, jokingly replying, "Well, I would think about it if you let me be a full-time housewife." The truth was, he believed she was serious. Marrying a man nearly 40 years her senior seemed like a mere joke to her. It turned horrifying when he persistently pressed her to marry him, leading her parents to intervene and obtain a restraining order against him. Reading the private investigation report, I laughed so hard I hyperventilated. When he came home late, I assumed he was working hard, unaware of the truth. Instead, he was hitting on young girls at bars and strip joints, boasting, "I'm surprisingly popular with young girls. I'm a salesman, so I have this easy-to-talk-to aura and get along with them. And I'm told that I look younger. Don't you think so?" The girls apparently cringed at his comments. With no use for his older wife and viewing me only as a cash dispenser, his misconceived self-image turned him into a somewhat laughable stalker who almost got in trouble with the police. Perhaps it would have been better if he had cheated on me. Unfortunately, he couldn't even find a mistress. The reason behind his pursuit of a young girl was his friend Matt having a grandchild. Matt recounted, "As soon as he saw my grandchild, he said he wanted to have a child himself. I scolded him, saying he shouldn't say such a thing. You have been paying his debt for him." He was absolutely mortified. "I'm glad I didn't spend my golden years with that man," I muttered. My divorce finalized, and despite unclear property division, he gave up due to my attorney's reputation. I wondered how such a gutless person had stayed in business. He sold the store to pay me back. Fortunately, just before the sale, his employees abandoned him. Customers frowned at him for giving up a family business. When they learned the reason was to pay his ex-wife, shock spread through the community. He got what he deserved when he demanded a divorce. A true story that sounded like a comedy circulated. Even if he hadn't sold the store, the bad publicity would have affected his business. Selling before bankruptcy was probably a blessing. The money wasn't enough, so he still works part-time to pay me back. Sometimes he messages, "It was all my fault. Can we get back together?" Even after blocking, he calls from different phones. "If you contact your ex-wife any further, we'll file a restraining order," warned my attorney. The calls stopped. He is terrified of the attorney. Guess what I do now? I'm a marriage counselor. Turning 50, I joined my friend's matchmaking business. I quit my previous job, helping singles find a match, offering advice on finances, insurance, etc. Couples appreciating frank discussions from the beginning increased our membership. Having been through a lot, I don't want them to make the same mistakes I did. Though my salary is lower, I enjoy helping others be happy every day. I found happiness after getting rid of my ex-husband. Today, I'm a bridge to someone else's happiness. And then, Bob dropped the bombshell. Clear out your room next month. When my mother gets discharged from the hospital, I'm bringing her straight to this house. Living together might make household chores easier, but I'll have to face my mother-in-law and endure her snide comments every single day. I was utterly devastated. Understanding that he seemed determined to make this happen with his mother, rather than argue with him, I knew it was better to discreetly take measures. Years of experience had taught me that. Bob left, not suspecting a thing, and seemed quite pleased. Everything's going according to my plan, I thought. It was so simple, it was laughable. A few hours later, after tidying up and taking a break, my phone rang loudly. It was a frantic call from Bob. Hey, what the heck? The house is empty. I am Catherine Rose, a 45-year-old working mother holding a managerial position at a publishing company. I have a husband and 2 kids, a typical American family. When I got married, the idea of balancing work and family was just beginning to gain traction. It was an era when it was common for women to marry and become homemakers. Bob had allowed me to work, and in return, I've given my all to both my job and household chores. After having kids, I've been fully committed to raising them as well. But lately, I've been feeling overwhelmed. My mother-in-law, Mary, who was initially against me working, has started to complain. When are you going to stop this job nonsense? You're such a terrible wife. Back in our day, the job came second. Our main duty was to dedicate ourselves to our homes. I've been working hard in both my career and home, raising the kids and managing household chores. I'd always thought of it as repaying the kindness Bob showed by supporting my career. Perhaps seeing my dedication, both my daughter and son help around the house. My daughter does the laundry and ironing, while my son takes care of the bath and fills the tub every day. When I come home, I just have to prepare the meal and clean up. I'm so grateful to my kids. But even though we're both working, Bob doesn't lift a finger. I've asked him to help out several times, but Bob's answer is always the same. Catherine, I let you keep working, didn't I? You're trying to skip out on your wife duties and make me do the chores because you want to have an easy life. Quit playing the victim. And every time my mother-in-law would tattle on me, and I'd get an earful from her. Bob's the breadwinner of the family, you know, and you're trying to make him do house chores. What are you thinking, Mary? This is why it's never good for a woman to work. Be grateful I even let you work. Understand your place. Lately, perhaps she's bored, but almost every night she calls with these snide remarks. It's become so frequent and unbearable that both my kids and I are fed up. My kids have even started pretending they are needed somewhere else to hang up the phone. Sure, I'd appreciate the opportunity to keep working, but why the constant hostility? I've been the one handling both the household chores and raising the kids. She should understand how challenging it is to juggle both roles. What more does she want from me? Right now, I'm under so much stress, and the only saving grace is that my kids are on my side. The root cause of this situation lies in Bob's salary. Truth be told, Bob's pay isn't that great. It would be considered on the lower end. He had a tough time finding a job and eventually landed one at a small company thanks to a family connection. If he had shown some initiative, I wouldn't have cared about the low salary and would have supported him wholeheartedly. However, Bob got down on himself because of the way he got the job. In the beginning, he used to mutter things about how he should have been working at a bigger, more renowned company. He only ever did the work given to him, never striving for promotions or looking for new job opportunities. Someone truly capable would have studied on the side or honed their skills to find better job opportunities, but Bob didn't. So he only ever got raises based on seniority, and his performance-based bonuses were always the bare minimum. On the other hand, the company I work for is a nationwide corporation with parental leave policies in place early on. While it felt the effects of the economic bubble, it's a reputable company that has managed to avoid major salary cuts. Moreover, I've climbed up to the position of manager, successfully handling a significant number of contracts and projects. Naturally, I've earned considerably more than Bob. I'm even covering our kids' expenses, using my paycheck to set aside money for their college funds. I've taken full advantage of the benefits of working for a large corporation. Looking back, it feels like I was living off my savings when I took parental leave for my 2 children and had no salary. With Bob's salary, there's no way he could cover all the living expenses with 2 kids. I don't recall ever receiving living expenses from Bob, and there's no record of any transfers. Perhaps Bob let me continue working because he thought he could rely on my earnings. Lately, I've been thinking about this a lot, wondering if we've mostly been living on my salary. To confirm this suspicion, I looked at my bank book, and it became evident. The rent, utilities, groceries, and the kids' school fees. I've been paying for all of it. There's not a single penny coming in from Bob's account. I chuckled, feeling utterly drained. Bob's salary is completely spent on his hobbies and providing pocket money to my mother-in-law. I've always believed I owed Bob for allowing me to continue working, which is why I've been putting in so much effort with household chores and childcare. However, the current situation is quite different. I'm covering all the living expenses while Bob freely spends his salary without saving a dime. In terms of supporting our lives, it seems I've become the main breadwinner, while Bob does as he pleases. If I were to leave with the kids, what would happen? Or if I handed him this bank book and told him to leave, would Bob quietly go along with his claim of being the main breadwinner? It's a perplexing situation, and I can't comprehend his perspective. His catchphrase is, "I'm the one supporting y'all. If you've got a problem, just leave." Is he under the impression that he covers the living expenses while spending his salary freely? It's a total mystery. If I, the one paying for everything, were to leave with the kids, what would transpire? Would Bob just quietly go along, sticking to his claim of being the main breadwinner? He'd probably tattle to my mother-in-law. I wonder if she knows about the difference in our salaries. If she did, she likely wouldn't make those snide remarks. Perhaps she thinks Bob is a wonderful son, supporting his family and even allowing his wife to work. If she knew about the salary difference, what would she think? Would she ditch Bob and cozy up to me? No, that's the last thing I'd want. As I contemplate these thoughts, my mother-in-law has an accident at her home and hurts her foot. It appears she'll need hospitalization and physical therapy for a while. With my father-in-law having passed away before Bob and I got married, my mother-in-law has been living alone. Either Bob or I have to take care of her. In a call from the hospitalized mother-in-law, she starts with her demands and continues despite my attempt to explain my work situation. I decide to let Bob handle her, given the stress of being criticized by her for working. When I ask Bob to care for my mother-in-law, he complains immediately. "Hey, Catherine, why aren't you looking after Mom? I'm working too, you know." Despite being his mother, he shifts all caregiving responsibilities to his wife. Holding back my frustration, I reply, "I have work too, Bob, plus all the chores at home. If you'd help around the house, maybe I could visit her more. More importantly, I think your mom would be happier if it was you who came to care for her." While venting stress on a daughter-in-law is common, it's better to approach such situations with positivity. So I keep finding reasons to avoid caring for my mother-in-law. I diligently washed and folded my mother-in-law's laundry, carefully packing it into a bag. If she asked for specific items, I made sure to buy them, even checking the names of the products she requested. Even if Bob took credit for these things and I ended up shouldering the blame, I didn't mind. I just wanted to avoid hearing my mother-in-law's snide remarks. Thankfully, my judgment seemed right. My mother-in-law greeted Bob with a big smile every day. Apparently, for a mother like mine, nothing beats the joy of being cherished by her son. Having her beloved son around must feel much better than dealing with a daughter-in-law she'd want to make sarcastic comments about every day. It seemed like she eagerly awaited Bob's return from work, focusing on chatting with him. She handed Bob a shopping list note, and since the first time she was admitted to the hospital, she hadn't called me. Observing my mother-in-law's smiling interactions with Bob, it seemed he felt like he was being a good son. Even when he returned home at night, He handed me the laundry and shopping notes without any complaints. Although Bob would throw in some sarcastic remarks at me while handing over my mother-in-law's things, I was able to live peacefully. In the middle of the night, I muttered to myself that I just didn't want to hear any of my mother-in-law's complaints right now. I hoped for things to stay peaceful for a while. However, injuries took a toll on my mother-in-law's age, and despite my efforts through Bob for her rehab, she tended to skip it. Delighted with her son's visits, she would wait in her room for Bob's arrival, making various requests. While my mother-in-law rarely called on me directly, I was the one who actually fulfilled her requests, running errands, doing laundry, and even bringing her snacks. All she did was sit in her hospital room, chatting cheerfully with her son, while I handled the housework. It was a relief not to see my mother-in-law, but I was worn out from her numerous requests, and shopping alone became a significant chore. Understanding that living alone was inconvenient with her weakened legs, my mother-in-law made a shocking request to Bob. She expressed difficulty in shopping and preparing meals, asking him not to leave her alone. Of course, Bob sided with her, suggesting they live together. It seemed they were moving in that direction without consulting me. Finally, Bob dropped the bombshell. He would be living with his mother starting next month, instructing me to clear out my room. From the perspective of efficiency in household chores, it made sense for my mother-in-law to live with us. However, I was now faced with the prospect of seeing my mother-in-law every day and enduring her nagging. Despite my downcast feelings, Bob acted as if it was already decided that we would all live together. "I understand," I replied with little energy. Bob seemed determined to force this co-living situation, regardless of the despair I felt. It might be better to secretly make plans rather than argue about it. I knew this from years of experience. While Bob and my mother-in-law happily planned for the move, I constantly thought about how I could escape. I have my own room where I gather and review work materials. It's like a study or an office, essential for me. Bob wants me to give it up. Without this room, my work would be impacted, and I might have to come home even later than I do now. I muttered to myself while staring at the bookshelf, wondering where to move all these books and documents. I can't leave them at home if we live with my mother-in-law. They're too important to risk getting thrown away or damaged. It may sound like something out of a TV drama, but I really fear she might throw them out, especially since she'll probably target what she knows is important to me. And if I dare complain, she'll feign ignorance and run to Bob for support. There will be no peace for me in this house once we start living together. I can see her bossing me around and making snide remarks about my work, wearing me out. What should I do? If my mother-in-law is coming to this house, I had a sudden realization. Why hadn't I thought of this simple solution before? It seems living with my mother-in-law and all her nagging wore me down more than I realized. It felt like the fog before my eyes was gradually clearing up. Well, of course, there's absolutely no need for me to hold back. Why didn't I realize something so simple? I mumbled to myself and immediately began making preparations. As the month changed, the day of my mother-in-law's discharge from the hospital arrived. Bob was all excited, having taken the day off from the start of the morning. "Hey, you better take proper care of my mom from now on. Don't think I'm going to step in like I did when she was in the hospital," he said in a commanding tone. Without responding to Bob's order, I changed the subject. "Oh, speaking of which, your mom's been in the hospital for quite a while, right? Hospital food is bland, and they don't give you much. I bet a gourmet like her wasn't satisfied. I think the discharge process and packing will take up the morning. So why don't you take her out for some good food? You took the day off after all. How about a nice drive, just the two of you? I think she'd really appreciate it." I handed Bob a generous amount of cash. I had set aside some money for living expenses and even Bob's personal spending, but this was more than his monthly allowance. Surprised by the unexpected bonus, Bob's spirits lifted even higher. "Well, aren't you thoughtful? All right, I'll use this money and go for a drive with my mom. I'll give you a call when we decide about dinner. Make sure the house is in tip-top shape for my mom. All right. Without a hint of suspicion, Bob happily left. Everything was going just as I had planned. It was almost too simple. I couldn't help but laugh. This should buy me some time. I eagerly anticipated Bob and my mother-in-law's return as I continued tidying up the house. It was crucial to finish cleaning before they came back. A few hours later, just as I was taking a break after completing my tasks, my cell phone rang loudly. The call came in a flustered tone from Bob. "Hey, what's going on? The house is empty." That's right. After Bob went to pick up my mother-in-law, I moved all our stuff to the new house we just rented. Of course, I left some of Bob's personal belongings and a bed for my mother-in-law in the room. "Oh, you're back already. You told me to clear out the room, so I emptied both the room and the living room for Mom to feel comfortable. From now on, please enjoy your time with her," I responded nonchalantly, which only infuriated Bob. "You've got to be kidding me. The living room and kitchen are totally empty. After all I've done to support this family, how could you?" There it was, his go-to line. He seemed to believe that saying this put him in a superior position. How naive. "No, Bob. I've been the one supporting the family, including you. Weren't you spending your paycheck on pocket money for your mom and your own hobbies, and yet you demand an allowance from the family budget? How does that make you the breadwinner?" Bob seemed surprised by my resistance, but he retorted nonetheless. His argument, however, was nonsensical. "Shut it. I'm the man here. I'm the head of this household. You, as my wife, should just do as I say. Now put everything back the way it was." "No thanks. I bought all the furniture in the living room and all the kitchenware with my salary. The kids are with me, so don't worry. I also paid for the rent, utilities, and groceries of that house. So, in reality, I'm the breadwinner. Why did you decide to live with your mom without consulting me? I can't live with someone so selfish as you. Wish you can be the provider. Now live your life as you please." It seemed that Bob finally realized my intentions. "Hold on. Are you saying the rent for this place I've paid up until the end of this month, but from next month, you'll need to handle it?" I'd also canceled all the automatic payments for electricity, gas, and the internet. So good luck with that. Bob's words probably tipped off the situation. My mother-in-law also started making a racket in a loud voice. "How could you do this, Catherine? Just because you have a job doesn't mean you can act all high and mighty. Fine, Bob and I will live here in luxury." Oh, does my mother-in-law not know about Bob's earnings? I hope you can have that luxurious life. That is, if your son can afford it anyway. Goodbye. Wait, Catherine. Where are you right now? I didn't bother listening to the rest of Bob's rant. I hung up and blocked both Bob and my mother-in-law's numbers. The aftermath unfolded as expected. With his meager salary from an uninspiring job at a small company, Bob had little left after paying the rent and utilities for the needlessly spacious apartment that once housed a family of 4. Constant bickering between Bob and my mother-in-law became a regular occurrence. In their new, oversized living space, complaints about meals were met with retorts like, "Can't you provide something better for your mother? And shut up. If you want something else, make it yourself. You're just making excuses, saying walking is too hard after slacking off on your rehab. You don't do anything at home, Mom. You're just wasting time." Neglecting her rehabilitation, my mother-in-law's legs weakened, and she refused to engage in any home workouts. Frustration crept in as her unreasonable demands on Bob increased. There were even concerns about early signs of Alzheimer's. Adding my mother-in-law's pension, their financial situation felt like poverty. Moving to a smaller, more suitable place seemed logical, but it appeared Bob hadn't considered it. Since that incident, I had blocked all communication from both Bob and my mother-in-law. They didn't know our new address, and any attempts to contact me were futile. Their living situation was on the verge of collapse. With a decent income, thanks to my children's help, I managed to lease a nice apartment where each of my kids had their own room. A spacious room served as both a bedroom and workspace. Although the rent might be a bit high, Without Bob in the picture, I was saving more than enough. My children, tired of being belittled by their father, were now living freely. Their helpfulness around the house was evident, and chores felt good without the constant criticism. Praising and thanking them for their assistance became a normal occurrence, and I was glad my children hadn't become bitter. Heading back to the apartment where my kids awaited, I initiated divorce proceedings through a lawyer. I lived on my salary while Bob spent all his earnings on himself and my mother-in-law, a valid reason for divorce in my book. Bob tried to argue against it, but my lawyer shut him down every time. His claim of being the breadwinner without contributing was labeled as verbal and financial abuse. In exchange for not seeking alimony and child support, I got custody of the kids. We agreed on no property division since the savings for the kids' college were from my earnings. Grateful that the car and house were in my name and rented, I could now focus on my job without complaints. With the money saved for college and my future earnings, I planned to support my kids in whatever they'd wanted to pursue. Today, I was determined to work hard. Alright, this is one of those few times. I post here because usually these problems aren't as bad and I can handle them on my own. This time, however, it's gonna be a little crazy. Let me start from the get-go. Basically, what happens in my family is that my husband Gail is very attached to his family, especially his parents. It's gone to the point where if they jump, he's not going to ask why. Instead, he's going to ask how high. Obviously, that level of dependence and trust can sometimes come back to bite you even when you don't realize it. That's what's happening with Gail. He doesn't realize how damaging his dependence is getting, and when I try to tell him about it, he just gets mad at me. The very main reason that all this happened, and the reason I'm posting this story, is because my husband has been spoiling them since the very beginning. I get wanting to take care of your parents. I do. If my parents were living near us, I'd like to take care of them as much as possible too. But I would not do it to the extent that Gail and I do. That's the limit that I understand we don't have to cross. But Gail, unfortunately, does not. My in-laws have been asking us for money. Since we've both got stable incomes, and it's not like my in-laws are not well off or anything like that. They don't necessarily need the money from us. They can support themselves and even afford certain luxuries, so they don't need to ask for money, but they still do. Initially, I was okay with it because I understood that they're Gail's parents, and I'd need to fit them into our lives as well, but over time I got a bit icky about it. We've sent them so much money over the past years that if we saved that amount, we'd be able to go abroad on a vacation twice. I told Gail that he should not spend all his money on them simply because, well, then there's nothing left for us to save. But he did not understand. He started arguing with me, telling me that we're living a comfortable and well-fed life. So why can't this spare some extra money we have and just give it to his parents? I tried to make him understand that it's not about not supporting them. It's about him not caring about supporting me. We would need money if we ever decided to have kids, and if we wanted to make a big purchase or anything like that. It looked like he understood my point, but he still was not willing to stop giving them money. That made me so angry that I almost left the house that night. My anger was fueled even more when I remembered how they treated me in the past. If they were nice and loving ones who treated me well and let me feel like I was actually a part of the family, maybe I'd be nicer to them. They were horrible to me. They never made me feel like I was a part of the family at all. And when I needed them to be there for me, they weren't. When Gail and I got married, we weren't that well off. I had just graduated, and it had not been that long since Gail started working as well. This meant that we didn't actually have enough money to invest in a house and buy it. I perfectly remember Gail and I going to my in-laws, and having a proper discussion with them, telling them about everything we're going through, and making them explain how hard it is. However, when we asked for some money to start the process, they immediately said, no. It's like they did not even take any time to think it through. Instead, they just gave us an hour-long lecture on how we're adults now, so we need to be responsible and take care of our savings and whatnot. They told us that we needed to work extra hard to achieve our dreams and every other crap they could possibly spit from their mouth. I was a bit frustrated at their response, but I decided not to say anything and just kept my thoughts to myself. It was heartbreaking to see them not helping out their own children, but if Gail was okay with it, then I thought I needed to be fine with it as well. But then they did it again a year and a half ago. I inherited a house from my mother. It was a beautiful house, but it needed a lot of work. Obviously, we did not have the money or the resources needed to make these changes. I mean, we had some of the money saved, but we needed a bit more than that, and so we decided to ask my in-laws again for some money. Just a little sum of money to help us get the house ready to live in, but they said no to that too. And instead, they told us to earn our money and stop asking them for money. Not just that, but they told me to sell the house and invest in something that's actually useful and not something that looks like crap. As soon as I heard that, there were fumes coming out of my ears. This house was very precious to me as something that was connected to my mother, and to hear my in-laws talking about it like it was trash was very hurtful. I did not express that to them because I thought I would look rude, but I should have. Maybe then they would not be as shameless as they are right now. I'll tell you guys exactly why they're shameless though. So basically, after they rejected us, I gathered money and worked my butt off to renovate the house. I made it look presentable, and I made it look amazing. It was hard, but once I started earning as well, things got a bit easier so I could manage it. Anyways, it had been a few months since I invited my in-laws for dinner for my mother-in-law's birthday. By that time, the house looked absolutely incredible. I made it as perfect as I could, and I was very proud of it. Moving on, the day they actually came over for dinner, I was expected to go pretty well because, well, usually, if it's not money related, the conversation stays pretty squabble-free. Obviously, with these people, there's not one moment where you're not discussing money. So they come over, and as soon as they enter the house, their eyes go wide. Internally, I'm smirking because I know they did not expect me to go this hard on the renovation. Wide-eyed, they're completing my house way too much. I mean, some compliments are fine, like, oh, you did a wonderful job, or oh, your house looks incredible. But there was so much more. Every part of the house they'd stop, inspect, and then just ask me how much it cost. Why would they ask that for some stuff? Yeah, I get curious about it, especially because they knew we did not have the money. It's not like they gave us the money either, so I'm sure they were curious as to how I managed to afford all this, but honestly, I found their questions a little rude. It just felt way too forced. Like they weren't actually interested in the job I did or how pretty I made it look. They were just interested in how much it cost, and I actually did not realize it back then, but after what happened during dinner, it all made complete sense to me. Dinner was chaotic, to say the least. It started out very decent. It was a good conversation going on, and it even had a nice flow to it. But then my mother-in-law started talking about dream vacations. First, she asked me what my dream vacation was and where I'd like to go the most. But when I answered her question, it felt like she wasn't really interested and was waiting for me to finish as soon as possible. I gave her what she wanted, of course, and I made my answer very short, just the name of the place, and then she got all excited all of a sudden. That's when I get a bit suspicious. because there's no way that she was that excited for me, and then she opened up about the real reason behind all the weird acts that they've been doing ever since they stepped into this house. They wanted us to help them build a vacation house after all the years of rejecting us every time we've asked him for financial help. They'd come to us and asked us to pay for the quote vacation house. They're not even poor or anything. Why do they need our help? Why can't they save up enough and get a house for themselves? They think that just because I've managed to get my house to look so gorgeous, we're some sort of rich couple now, I guess. But we're not. I asked them to explain it to me a bit more, just so I could have a better idea of what they need and why they're getting a vacation house and stuff. But the response shocked me. They want to get one just because they're bored with their lives and they want a house to be able to go to every other weekend. For some reason, they can't afford the house by themselves, and they told us that they know that we've got money saved on because this house looks like it costs a lot. At that point, I was aggravated, and so I told them we did not have that kind of money to waste. That was very wrong to say, because Gail looked at me like I murdered his parents in front of him. As soon as these words were out of my mouth, he glared at me and told me that anything that we spent on his parents' happiness was never a waste, and I needed to, quote, watch what I say, which is ridiculous because he knew I was right. A vacation house is not a necessity to have, and it's not like they're going to die if they don't get it. My father-in-law still works and they can save up and get one by themselves. They don't want to do that though. They want us to give them money so they can take the easy way out. Then I remembered that Gail is not an only child. He has an older brother as well. So why weren't they asking him for money? I brought that up because they were getting too defensive and looked like they were about to make a living hell for me. Apparently, Seb isn't as financially stable as us, so they don't want to burden him with this. Oh, I'm sorry, but I could not keep my mouth shut at that point, and I expressed what I was feeling, but I made sure I was not being disrespectful. Seb was earning as much as we were. He just had children to take care of, so most of its expenses were going towards that. However, I wanted to try it for kids as well. And if we kept giving my in-laws money, how would I save enough to take care of my children? The counter-argument we received was that we don't have children right now, which means we've got more money to spare than Seb and his family. And then they started emotionally blackmailing Gail because they knew that they would not be able to get through to me. They started talking about how they were lonely and bored because both their sons had started their own families, which is why a vacation would benefit them really. Well, Gail fell into the trap because why wouldn't he? As soon as his parents get a little bit emotional, he does everything that's asked of him. I knew I could not did him then, but I didn't want my in-laws to know they've won us over. How I kept saying that the arguments were progressively getting worse and unstoppable. Well, this is the consequence of that. A week ago, Gail and I had one of our biggest fights. We've never fought this hard before, and it was actually a bit weird how aggressive he was. Obviously, there was no physical aggression. He wasn't raising his hand to me or anything, but his words hit much harder. He basically told me that $100,000 he's planning to give to his parents is not just mine, so he can do whatever he wants with it. He thinks that he was being nice by asking for my opinion and my permission before taking action on his own, but he doesn't need to do that anymore. The fight got worse when he actually gave the money to his parents, and he returned home from work one day and did not even bother mentioning anything to me. It wasn't until my mother-in-law called me to tell me that she got the money that I found out that he gave it away. I was enraged, obviously. We had not discussed giving the money away, and he knew I was not okay with the fact. Yet he was still going to go ahead and just give it away. He didn't even keep a single dollar for ourselves. The entire $100,000 he saved up over the years, he gave to his parents. Then, when I told him that he needed to get the money back, he told me to shut up and let him deal with his parents how he wanted. Even when I was factually arguing that we're a couple and we should decide on big financial decisions together, he wasn't having it. It seemed like he totally got tired of us constantly arguing because he threatened me with a divorce right in the middle of our argument. He suddenly screamed at me and told me if I tried stopping him from giving a share of the money to his parents, he was going to get a divorce and leave me all alone. It was the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I've been with him through everything in his life, and now he was going to leave me because I was trying to put our family first instead of his parents. At that point, all I could ask him was if he did not care about what I wanted and how I wanted to build our life together, have children, and live a happy life. He cared for none of it, but instead, he wanted to give all this to his parents while I was suffering in the background. In a moment of anger, he walked out of the house and slammed the door behind him. And it's been a week since he's been home. I've tried texting him multiple times. I've called him so many times, and I've left more than a dozen voicemails. But he keeps ignoring them or leaving me on hold. Guys, I'm so hurt because I didn't think I'd ever lose Gail, especially over something as silly as this. I've contacted my in-laws, and it turned out that Gail had gone back to live with them for the past week. He hasn't been home once, and I'm so stressed and confused about what's going to happen and how I'm going to deal with everything. Update number 3. So a few more days into this mess, I decided that I could not keep myself trapped in this family forever, especially if they act as messed up as they are right now. I was not sure about my decision in the early days, but now, after waiting for Gail to come home for more than a week, I decided that I needed to take action and set him straight. Well, if he wants a divorce, that's exactly what he's going to get. So I contacted my lawyer first thing that morning and let him know of the situation. She let me know that I could not only divorce Gail, but also take him to court. After the entire meeting ended, I decided that I did not need this house anymore. The only thing it was doing now was reminding me of my husband and all the good and bad memories that we've had together. That's why I decided to sell the house and keep the money for myself. Gail could not even ask for this money legally because the house was in my name, given to me by my mother, and I could do anything I pleased with it, right? So I sold it. It brought me a lot of money, which helped make the court case much easier to process. So the next day, while I finalized the divorce papers and had them sent to Gail, I knew the exact time he received those papers because I got the most heated phone call one could ever get. He was talking about how I was being stupid, and it didn't matter because he was going to divorce me as well. And then he got to find out about me taking him to court, and he absolutely exploded. Obviously, no one wants to go there or anything, but I hung up on him midway because I've had enough of his anger now. Then the days of the court case came. I was feeling all kinds of jitters, and I was nervous. What if it went wrong? What if I lose the money I've made from selling the house? All these kinds of questions were raising in my head. But I did not let them take control of me. I got dressed in a way that I said was confident, put my best smile on, and I reached the court doors. It was the final hearing of the divorce, and it went incredibly well. Not only did I get to keep all the money from the house, I also got $100,000 from Gail as alimony as a legal obligation. I was shocked. I did not expect to win more money from him, but it was worth it for all the damages he's done to me and to my mental health. I should accept this money with grace. The sour expression on their faces just added to my glee, and I knew that they thought that they could rob me of my money and my house, but they probably weren't expecting to lose everything themselves. It's been a few days since then, and life has been relatively peaceful. I did get a phone call from my mother-in-law, where she was bashing me for what I've done and told me I could never have a family of my own because I don't know how to take care of people, that I'm just incredibly selfish who only looks at her needs and not others. Apart from that, it's been okay. I got a new apartment for myself using the money I made selling the house, and now I can finally save up as much money as I want without having to worry about other people constantly asking for it. But let me know, guys, do you think I went too far by taking him to court? Let me know in the comments down below. I was a little surprised when I was reading the comment section of this one. Let me break down what some of the comments were saying. Some of them were actually coming up with the idea by saying, you know what, I don't really blame Gail. I mean, what's wrong with giving your parents $100,000 when you have $200,000? But there were other commenters basically saying, no, that's ridiculous. Like OP said, they've been helping his parents for years. They're trying to build their own house, and they need that money. So this is where the comments really split apart. They were saying they do not agree that OP should just sell the house, take the money because it's under her name. They thought that was disrespectful. But there were about 50 saying no, that was exactly what she needed to do. So guys, drop your comments down below. Let's discuss this one. My name is Mr. Reddit. I narrate stories every single day. Hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys tomorrow. And remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya. Thank you.
My name is Amy, and I'm 33 years old. I started a business during my college years, and through hard work, I became the CEO. Over time, I expanded the company to achieve an impressive annual turnover of $3 million. Unfortunately, my husband and I were unable to have children. He mocked me for this, calling me barren throughout our marriage. To make matters worse, he fathered a child with another woman and decided to marry her. Despite his own infidelity, he continued to demean me until the end. His cruel remarks cut deep. He once told me, "Go get some fertility treatment. It's a joke to live your whole life alone. And you have the nerve to say that after having an affair, it's true you can't get pregnant. No one will marry someone like you." I had finally reached the breaking point. A few days ago, I filed for divorce. I've moved back to my parents' house, while my soon-to-be ex-husband remains in the home we shared. He contacted me to remove my belongings because he plans to live there with his new partner. Today is likely the last day I'll see him, and he stayed true to form with his sarcasm. The future bride is coming. The barren woman should pack up and leave. Your presence will make her uncomfortable, he said. This was my home too, I retorted. Why should I rush out for your cheating and remarried partner? The divorce is already final. Such clingy remarks are disgraceful. We agreed that I continue living here, so you have no reason to stay. Hurry up. I was going to leave anyway. Good luck finding a new man to support you. Oh, but a barren woman like you remarrying is impossible. His continued sarcasm was astounding. I had grown accustomed to his contempt, but his nasty remarks still grated on me. I knew I had made the right decision to divorce. As I sighed, I wondered why I had ever married him. We met by chance at a cafe near our workplace, and after his persistent pursuit, we started dating. I had always been focused on my work, with little involvement in romance, often feeling betrayed and hurt. Despite this, I still hoped for a family and children in the future. As a CEO with a $3 million revenue, I was frequently approached for my money, which I despised. To avoid this, I lied to my husband, claiming to be a low-income contract worker, and even used a subsidiary's business card to hide my true status. He said he fell in love with me at first sight and pursued me relentlessly. Little did I know he would turn into such a sarcastic person. As years went by, it became clear that a man's interest would wane for a younger, more attractive woman. And my husband proved that when he started an affair right after our marriage. He even fathered a child with his lover. When he asked for a divorce, I accepted immediately. Assuming I was financially poor, he never discussed dividing assets. Instead, when he and his mistress came to apologize for his infidelity, they quickly offered compensation for my mental distress. Amy, you're a contract worker, aren't you? In a worse position than me, childless and abandoned. A younger woman has taken your husband and child to remarry. I'm terribly sorry. We'll definitely pay the compensation, his mistress said. Indeed, my husband added, infertility treatments cost money and I will pay my share too. Despite their promises, their words were laced with scorn, fueling my anger. His mistress, a charming woman 8 years younger than me, was eager to have a child and become a housewife. When my husband wasn't around, I asked her if she planned to continue working. She firmly replied that she intended to quit after taking a 3-year maternity leave to get money from the company, rather than quitting right after marriage. But isn't that inconvenient for the company? I asked. Well, I became a full-time employee to get all the benefits, right? It's not uncommon for people not to return after maternity leave. You're too serious, Amy. You need to be smarter about this. It's probably why your husband left you, she retorted sarcastically. I was seething with irritation. I had no problem with being a housewife, but I couldn't empathize with someone who so thoughtlessly inconveniences others. My husband, oblivious to her disregard, had continued to belittle me. Infertile women should hurry up and get treatment. Your looks are your only asset, and they're fading with age too, he'd sneer. Who are you talking about? I asked, feeling a surge of defiance. You, the infertile woman, he replied with contempt. In response, I pulled out some documents from an envelope. What's this? He demanded, unable to hide his agitation. Inside were 3 documents I had carefully gathered, each meant to shock him. After years of mockery, betrayal, and listening to him brag about his affair and remarriage, my anger had reached its peak. I didn't want his compensation money. I was determined to get my revenge and leave him unsettled. You kept calling me infertile. So I got tested. Here are the results, I said, placing the documents in front of him. No abnormalities. So who is this infertile woman you keep talking about? Maybe the issue lies with you. This is ridiculous, he stammered. It has to be her. Despite our efforts, we never managed to have kids. Even if you say there's nothing wrong with you, I managed to have a child with her. I wasn't even trying, and she got pregnant right away. He looked visibly confused, as if the fear that his infertility might be the cause and the suspicion that the child might not be his were overwhelming him. Well, it's too convenient that she got pregnant so quickly when we couldn't. She's young and cute, but could it be someone else's child? He muttered, his shock evident. You haven't been tested, have you? I said. It might actually be your child. Don't be so pessimistic. I tried to console him, but he seemed to have convinced himself of his own infertility. Disturbed, he immediately contacted his lover, insisting they needed to talk. What did she say? I asked. She's coming over now, he replied. That's good, I said in a deliberately cheerful tone. If you can confirm it's your child, you'll feel relieved, right? After a moment, he pulled out another document from an envelope. It was a detective's report. This photo. It's me. When was this taken? And this one, right after we got married. Did you know about this all along? Yes, I said calmly. I've known about your infidelity for years, long before you ever admitted to it. That's why I wasn't surprised when you confessed your affair. At the time when I was happiest in our marriage, you were already involved with someone else. Why didn't you say something sooner? If you knew, you should have talked to me. I feel like a fool for not seeing it. Why should I be the one getting scolded? I've been turning a blind eye to your affairs. You should actually be thankful. Hiring a detective right after we got married, that's just pathetic. It's clear you never trusted me at all. I'm shocked, but I know divorcing was the right decision. In the end, you were deceiving me too. We were betraying each other, so it's only fair. When we decided to get married, I was completely carefree and didn't think to conduct a background check on you. I submitted the marriage registration without truly knowing you. We were newlyweds, affectionate and intimate. But even if it wasn't a marriage of convenience, it's never a loss to understand your partner's background. So just to be cautious, I requested an investigation a few months after our marriage. That investigation unexpectedly revealed your infidelity. I was shocked, as there were no signs of cheating before. But I didn't fall into despair. I wasn't obsessed with you. I married you because you courted me. Yes, I loved you, but only because you cherished and loved me. I wasn't going to cling to a husband who didn't care about me. I wasn't deeply hurt. I was just astonished that you could be with me while seeing other women. I told you this to set the record straight. From the beginning of our marriage, my career was my top priority, and I didn't want to get bogged down with divorce proceedings or negotiating alimony right away. Instead, I chose to focus on my work, which is why I continue to ignore your infidelity. When I revealed this to you, you responded with, "But weren't we trying to have a child?" What would you have done if you had gotten pregnant? Were you planning to raise it together even though you knew about the affair? Yes, I said. A child is a gift from God, and we can't control everything. I lied. The truth was, I pretended to be trying to conceive with you because you wanted a child. After your infidelity came to light, I secretly took birth control pills. Honestly, I was reluctant to start a family with an unfaithful husband and anticipated that we would eventually divorce. To avoid pregnancy, I secretly continued using birth control. Ultimately, the fact that we didn't have children was a planned outcome. While I had some fantasies about having kids, I wasn't strongly motivated to do so. Even with a babysitter, I knew that parenting would distract from my work focus. I went along with my husband's desire to have a child. But I had no obligation to undergo pregnancy and childbirth for a man who deceived me. In short, we weren't infertile. I was just using birth control and didn't bother to tell him because it seemed too troublesome. Unaware of this, my husband mistakenly believed he was infertile and thought his mistress was pregnant by another man. As we discussed this, his mistress arrived at our house for the first time since the alimony negotiations. She was the type who easily attracted men and was often disliked by women, and today was no different. "Hello, Amy. You're here to collect all your things, right? I appreciate the trouble you're going through," she said, her tone dripping with contempt, clearly reveling in having taken my husband. I replied sarcastically, "I should be thanking you. You're taking over my hand-me-down husband in house." Her smile faltered at my response. As we continued our exchange, my husband seemed increasingly agitated and anxious. He interrupted our conversation. "Hey, I might be infertile. Isn't it strange that we couldn't have a child?" "What are you talking about all of a sudden? That's impossible. Has someone been feeding you nonsense? We're getting married. Your previous wife was the one with infertility issues, right?" "No, she wasn't infertile," I said calmly, pulling out the test results. "It's hard to discuss, but we were genuinely trying to have a child. If neither of us had issues, it wouldn't be unusual if we succeeded. But we did. Yet for us to have a child without realizing it, something's off. Maybe it's because you and I weren't meant to be. Your previous marriage just wasn't meant to work. Let's stop this pointless conversation. Doubting me is only going to stress me out and affect her baby." My husband's suspicions about his mistress extended beyond infertility. He pulled out a photo from an envelope and demanded, "What is this supposed to be?" The photo showed his mistress cozying up with another male colleague. After discovering his infidelity, I had hired a detective to investigate her as well. It turned out she had been involved with several men at work. Along with a photo of her with another colleague, there were also pictures of her heading to hotels with other partners. The mistress turned pale at the sight of the photos. "What is this?" she gasped, clearly stunned. "I had you investigated too," I told her. "It's truly deplorable how many men you've been involved with at work. I had this evidence long before you started talking about remarriage. Every time my husband mentioned you, I couldn't help but laugh inside at the absurdity of deciding to marry while being unaware of your infidelity. I'm truly astounded. If you knew, you should have told me sooner. I wouldn't have married this woman and we wouldn't have ended up divorced. If the infertility was my fault, I would have sought treatment to have a child with you," my husband exclaimed, his attitude shifting dramatically upon learning about his mistress's multiple affairs. "Please, what are you saying now? The child in my belly is growing every day, and these photos are from so long ago. Don't bring them up now. Since conceiving your child, you're the only one for me. I wouldn't even consider remarriage if I didn't love you. Is there any proof that the child is actually mine? It could be someone else's. If you're so sure, show me the evidence. The men in these photos are all my juniors. If the child's theirs, I refuse to raise it." "The child was conceived after we slept together," I said firmly. "It's obviously yours. The introductions to our parents are done. There's no turning back now. We haven't filed the marriage registration, so this is our last chance to start over and clarify the truth." After a heated argument with my husband, his mistress turned her hostility towards me. We were living peacefully until my ex-wife brought these photos. "We've settled our discussions and paid the alimony. Why interfere now? It's pitiful for a discarded wife to still cause a fuss." "You always mock me for being older," I retorted. "But is that all you can say? Perhaps it's because youth is all you have." I wasn't obsessed with my husband, and hearing about the remarriage didn't hurt me much. Your attacks are meaningless. Had I not exposed your affairs, you would have continued to hide them from him. I thought it was kinder not to have secrets between spouses. Kindness? That's rich coming from you. These photos have only caused chaos. We could have been happy otherwise. You're terrible, the mistress retorted, visibly shaken. Wait a minute, were you really planning to keep hiding this from me? I can't believe a woman with such nerve. Let's reconsider the remarriage. My husband was clearly rattled by the mistress's betrayal. I was taken aback by this turn of events as well, but I couldn't help but think that if their relationship was this fragile, it was doomed from the start. I paid alimony to you, justifying my relationship with him. If it's going to be nullified, I should have just denied the affair from the beginning, I said. Calling off the remarriage now is unthinkable. Upon hearing this, my lover responded. About that alimony, I accepted it at the time, but I donated all of it afterward. I have enough money as it is. I never wanted to keep any money from you too, so I don't appreciate being talked down to as if you did me a favor with that amount. What? Don't talk big when your income is probably enough to cover that small amount, the mistress snapped. That alimony nearly wiped out my savings. Donating it is just a joke, right? If that was the case, you should have said you didn't want it from the start. No, my husband interjected. She's just a contract worker in our subsidiary. Her income is clearly less than ours, so that's obviously a lie. If you really have that much money, marry me again and support me. My husband spoke with disbelief, still mocking me. You know, I had planned to support you after a few years of marriage. So when I heard you were divorcing me to remarry a younger woman, I thought it was foolish. Stop with the nonsense. Actually, I said calmly, there's something I've been hiding. Look inside this envelope. As I spoke, my husband pulled out a photo from the envelope. It was a picture of the board of directors of the group company he works for. His expression turned to shock as he saw the image. The mistress's eyes widened in recognition. Isn't that this lady? She asked incredulously. Is this a fake? Of course it's not a fake, I replied. The person at the center of the photo is me. I'm the president of your parent company. Sorry for keeping it a secret. Wait a minute, the mistress exclaimed. You're supposed to be just a contract worker at our subsidiary, and I thought the president of the parent company was a man. Stop lying. Yes, I used a pseudonym at the company, I admitted. When I started my business as a student, I faced frequent dismissal simply because I was a woman. To navigate these challenges, I used a male pseudonym and kept my identity private. My father acted as a director and spokesperson in the media while I pretended to be a contract worker. This strategy helped me avoid the scrutiny and potential jealousy that might arise from being a female president. I intended to reveal my true identity to you eventually. I had enough funds to support us, but saying my parents were dead was also a lie. My father is my business partner and my mother is well and living at home. Only the top executives knew the truth, so it's natural that you, as a subsidiary employee, wouldn't have been aware of it. When I disclosed this, their faces turned pale. My husband pleaded, I don't know if the child is mine. I'll cancel the remarriage. Please, I beg you, cancel the divorce. I really wanted a child with you. You were just insulting me and calling me a baroness, I responded coolly. The divorce papers have already been filed. It's impossible to cancel now. Do you understand who you're speaking to? With a smile, I added, as the president of the parent company, I've resolved to address this situation publicly to protect my valuable employees from being deceived by your behavior. The mistress, who had been mocking me as an older woman, suddenly shifted her tone and apologized. I'm sorry for trying to take your husband. If you wish, I'll return him to you. Please forgive me. I replied, he's my hand-me-down, so I don't need him returned. By the way, I need to announce the pregnancy within the company once it's stable. The mistress's face went even wider at this news. Please, could you not do that? Why would it cause problems if the company knows? I asked her sarcastically, do you think it wouldn't be a problem? It's likely that you're still involved with others in the company. If exposed, you face backlash from those men and find yourself in a difficult situation. I resolved to make the situation public. The next day, I went to the office and revealed that I, the president, am a woman and that my husband had an affair, divorced me, and had a child with his mistress. The revelation caused a stir among the employees, with many whispering about the scandal. As a result, my husband lost his credibility at work and became a target of criticism. He found himself in a difficult working environment. The mistress was also exposed for having relationships with multiple men at the company. She faced the wrath of those men, who were furious after receiving expensive gifts from her under false pretenses. Although the scandal could have led to lawsuits, it didn't go to court. The mistress managed to deflect blame and claimed the gifts were hers. Upon learning the full story, my father advised the mistress to consider leaving the company. Meanwhile, my ex-husband was ordered to transfer to a remote branch in Indonesia, a place few would willingly go. The mistress decided to accompany him there to raise their child together. Both their families refused to acknowledge their grandchild due to the scandal and their disrespect toward the president. In Indonesia, they faced the challenge of raising their child without family support. My ex-husband harbored growing distrust over the child's paternity and wanted a DNA test. But the mistress insisted there was no such facility in Indonesia, avoiding the test. Despite not wanting to remarry my husband, driven by his desire for a child and pressure from the mistress, ended up marrying her. However, the reality of married life was not as easy as he had imagined. The mistress, who had seen my husband as the top choice among the men she had been involved with, was now content living as a housewife. She claimed that she chose him for his high position. As for me, I've remained in the media spotlight as a female entrepreneur, leading a busy and fulfilling life. The company's stock price surged, and I continue to lead with success and resilience. Hey there, I'm Pernilla, a 28-year-old Danish girl trying to navigate life in the USA. So there I was sitting in my favorite coffee shop in downtown Chicago, sketching logo ideas, when this guy walks in. Tall, dark, and handsome doesn't even begin to cover it. That was Brandon. 3 whirlwind months later, we were saying, I do. You're sure about this, Pernilla? My best friend and coworker, Aisha, asked, helping me into my wedding dress. I mean, you barely know his family. I laughed it off. Come on, Aisha. They're going to love me. Oh, how wrong I was. Enter Evelyn, Brandon's mom, and Courtney, his sister. From day one, it was clear I wasn't what they had in mind for their precious Brandon. So, Pernilla, Evelyn began during our first family dinner, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. How long do you plan on staying in America? I tried to laugh it off. Well, I'm married to Brandon now, so I guess I'm here for good. The silence that followed was deafening. As weeks turned into months, I did everything I could to fit in. I learned to make apple pie, watched football, even started saying, "Ow." Okay, that one didn't stick, but nothing seemed to be enough. Honey, maybe you could try dressing a bit more American? Brandon suggested one day, eyeing my colorful Danish sweater. I frowned. What's wrong with how I dress? He backpedaled quickly. Nothing, is just, you know how mom is. And that was the problem. I was starting to know exactly how Evelyn was, and it wasn't pretty. As Thanksgiving approached, I threw myself into preparations, thinking this would be my chance to finally feel like part of the family. I'm thinking of making a traditional Danish dish alongside the turkey, I told Brandon, excited. He hesitated. Maybe stick to the classics this year, babe. Mom's pretty particular about Thanksgiving. I tried not to let the disappointment show. Sure, whatever you think is best. The day before Thanksgiving, Evelyn called. Pernilla, dear, why don't you come over early to help with preparations? Of course, I said, ignoring Aisha's eye roll beside me. Great. Oh, and don't worry about bringing anything. We've got it all covered. As I hung up, Aisha shook her head. Girl, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. I sighed. They're family now, Aisha. I have to try. The next morning, Brandon and I pulled up to his family's suburban home. As we walked to the door, he squeezed my hand. Ready for your first American Thanksgiving? I nodded, pushing down the knot of anxiety in my stomach. Ready as I'll ever be. Little did I know I was walking into a disaster that would change everything. The moment I stepped into Evelyn's kitchen, I could feel the tension in the air. The smell of roasting turkey mixed with the unmistakable stench of thinly veiled hostility. Oh, Pernilla, dear, Evelyn said sweetly, "Why don't you set the table? The good china is in the cabinet." I nodded, eager to help. But before I could reach for the plates, Courtney swooped in. "I've got it, Mom. Pernilla probably doesn't know how we do things here." The jabs continued all afternoon. Every family story conveniently left me out. Every tradition was explained to me like I was a child. "We always watch the parade, Pernilla. It's an American thing," Courtney said slowly, as if I couldn't understand. Finally, we sat down to eat. I noticed my plate looked different. The turkey seemed off, the texture strange. "Enjoy your meal, everyone," Evelyn smiled, her eyes gleaming as they met mine. I took a bite and almost gagged. The taste was awful, nothing like turkey. As I looked around in confusion, I caught glimpses of smirks. Poorly concealed laughter rippled through the table. "Is something wrong, Pernilla?" Brandon's uncle asked innocently. It hit me suddenly. This wasn't turkey. It was dog food. My stomach turned. "Oh my God," I whispered, pushing my chair back. "How could you?" Evelyn's laughter was the loudest. "Come now, Pernilla, it's just a little joke. Don't be so sensitive." I turned to Brandon, hoping for support, but he just sat there with a weak smile. "Babe, they're just teasing. It's not a big deal." Not a big deal? I felt like I was going to be sick. Without a word, I grabbed my purse and ran out, ignoring the calls behind me. As I drove away, tears blurred my vision. Memories of every slight and snub flashed before me. Evelyn accidentally spilling wine on my favorite dress. Courtney forgetting to invite me to her engagement party. Brandon never standing up for me. My phone buzzed nonstop. Brandon's text swung between dismissive and pleading. "Come on, it was just a prank. Don't overreact. Babe, please come back. You're embarrassing me. My family thinks you can't take a joke." I ignored them all and drove straight to Aisha's apartment. She opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me into a hug. "What happened?" she asked gently, leading me to the couch. Through my sobs, I told her everything. With every word I shared, Aisha's face darkened. "That's it," she said firmly. "You're leaving him tonight." I hesitated. But maybe if I just try harder. "No," Aisha cut me off. "This isn't about you trying harder. They're abusive, Pernilla. And Brandon, he's just as bad for allowing it." Deep down, I knew she was right. This wasn't love. This wasn't family. That night, while Brandon was still at his parents', I packed my bags. I left my wedding ring on the kitchen counter with a note. I deserve better than dog food and disrespect. Goodbye, Brandon. The next morning, I filed for divorce. As I signed the papers, a weight lifted off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I could breathe. But as I left the lawyer's office, my phone pinged with a message from Evelyn. "I always knew you weren't good enough for our family. Run back to Denmark, little girl." I stared at the screen, a new emotion rising in my chest. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. If they wanted to play games, fine. They were about to learn that this Danish girl could bite back. The weeks following Thanksgiving were a blur of tears, anger, and paperwork. I threw myself into work, grateful for the distraction. One day, my boss noticed my distress and approached me. "Pernilla, is everything okay? You seem different." I broke down, spilling the whole ugly story. To my surprise, she was incredibly supportive. "Take all the time you need. We've got your back here." Meanwhile, Brandon swung between begging for reconciliation and lashing out. "Baby, please, it was just a stupid prank. We can work this out," he pleaded one day. The next, it was, "You're being ridiculous. My family's right. You're too sensitive for your own good." His family, however, was consistent in their attacks. Rumors spread through our social circle, labeling me as a gold digger and culturally incompatible. Aisha, bless her, stood by me like a fortress. "Ignore those snakes. You're better off without them." She introduced me to her friend Mark, a divorce lawyer with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. "What they did was emotional abuse, Pernilla," he said during our first meeting. "We're going to make sure you come out of this okay." One sleepless night, I started writing, pouring my experiences into a blog post. To my shock, it went viral overnight. Comments flooded in. "This happened to me too. You're so brave for speaking out." I thought I was alone in dealing with toxic in-laws. Suddenly, I had a platform. People were listening, sharing their own stories of family abuse and cultural insensitivity. Brandon's family predictably tried to discredit me. "She's exaggerating for attention," Courtney posted on social media. "It was just a harmless joke." But their attempts backfired. More people came forward, including Brandon's ex-girlfriend. "They did similar things to me," she wrote. "The emotional manipulation, the jokes that went too far, it's a pattern with them." With Aisha and Mark's help, I compiled these stories, building a case that went beyond just my experience. "Pernilla," Mark said one evening, reviewing the evidence, "I think it's time to go public with all of this." I hesitated. What if they sue me for defamation? Aisha squeezed my hand. "Let them try. Truth is the best defense, and girl, you've got truth in spades." As I prepared my story for a major online publication, I felt a mix of fear and determination. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every person who'd ever been made to feel small by those who should have loved them. I took a deep breath and started typing. "My name is Pernilla, and this is the story of how my American dream turned into a nightmare." Little did I know, hitting publish would set off a chain of events that would change not just my life, but the lives of many others. Brandon's family thought they could break me. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The moment I hit publish, my world exploded. Within hours, my story was everywhere. News sites, social media, talk shows. The public outrage was immediate and intense. My phone buzzed nonstop with messages of support. "You're so brave, Pernilla. Thank you for speaking out." But the real shockwaves hit Brandon's family. His company, facing immense backlash, issued a statement. "We do not condone discriminatory behavior. Brandon is on indefinite leave while we investigate." Evelyn wasn't spared either. Parents at her school, horrified by her treatment of an immigrant daughter-in-law, demanded action. The school board called an emergency meeting. Courtney's perfect world crumbled too. Her fiance's family, disgusted by the revelations, withdrew their support. "The wedding's off," Aisha read aloud from a gossip site, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. Guess karma is real after all. Meanwhile, my blog took off. It became a platform for others to share their stories of family abuse and cultural insensitivity. I was overwhelmed by the response. Pernilla, my agent, yes, I had an agent now, said, "We got offers for book deals, speaking engagements. People want to hear your story." It was surreal. Me, the girl who once felt voiceless, now had the world's ear. Amidst the chaos, Brandon made one last attempt to reach out. He showed up at my new apartment looking haggard. "Pilla, please, I'm sorry. I didn't realize. Can we start over?" I looked at him, the man I once thought I loved, and felt nothing. "Now, Brandon, we can't. Goodbye." As I closed the door on him, I felt a chapter of my life definitively end. But as one door closed, others opened. My graphic design career soared. Clients, impressed by my story and my work, flooded in. "I'm starting my own agency," I told Aisha over celebratory drinks, focusing on empowering immigrant-owned businesses. She raised her glass. "To new beginnings and sweet justice." A year flew by in a whirlwind of success. My book became a bestseller, my speaking engagements sold out, and my agency thrived. Then came news that made me pause. Brandon's family business, the cornerstone of their wealth and status, was struggling. Boycotts and bad press had taken their toll. "They're selling off assets," Mark informed me during a catch-up call. "Seems the mighty have fallen." I felt a twinge, not of sadness, but of closure. The final victory came unexpectedly. I was nominated for an advocacy award recognizing my work in immigrant rights and family abuse awareness. Standing on stage, accepting the award, I saw my journey flash before my eyes. The scared, lonely immigrant girl, the betrayed wife, and now this, a woman, strong, successful, and proud of her scars. "This award," I said into the microphone, "is for every person who's ever felt alone in a foreign land or unwelcome in their own family. You are seen. You are heard, and you are worthy of love and respect." As applause washed over me, I thought about Brandon's family. Their cruelty had been intended to break me, but instead, it had forged me into something stronger than they could have ever imagined. I left the stage, award in hand, ready to write the next chapter of my life, on my own terms, in my own words, with the strength of my experiences behind me. And that's the end of Pernilla's journey from victim to victor. Now, here's a question for you. Was Pernilla justified in publicly exposing Brandon's family, or did she go too far in her pursuit of justice? Where's the line between standing up for yourself and seeking revenge? Share your thoughts in the comments below. My name is Emma Chen, and my story begins with dirt under my fingernails and the delicate scent of lilies floating on the air. My little flower shop, Blooming Dreams, was nestled between the towering skyscrapers of downtown Seattle, a vibrant burst of life amidst the graying monotony of steel and concrete. Another orchid gave up the ghost. I asked Sarah, my sole employee, as she gingerly removed a wilted plant from the front display. "Third one this week," she replied with a weary sigh, her brow furrowed. "Maybe it's time to stop stocking them." I shook my head, taking the plant from her hands with care. "No, we just need to figure out what's wrong and adjust their care. Every plant can thrive with the right attention." That belief had been my guiding principle since childhood. Growing up in rural China, I spent endless hours in my grandmother's garden, absorbing the unspoken language of plants. While other children played with toys, I buried myself in the intricacies of cultivation and the mysteries of hybridization. "Emma, you have magic in your hands," my grandmother would say as she watched me coax sickly plants back to life. "Remember, the strongest flowers bloom in the harshest conditions." At the time, her words seemed abstract. Now they were the foundation of my life. My journey to America began with a scholarship to study botanical sciences. The transition was far from easy: new culture, new language, and an unrelenting need to prove myself. Yet, like the wildflowers I admired, I thrived in unlikely soil. That's how I met James Wheeler. He stumbled literally into my life during my final year of grad school. Rushing to a business meeting, he barreled into my research greenhouse, scattering soil samples everywhere. "I'm so sorry," he exclaimed, crouching to gather the mess. I wasn't watching where Whoa, what are these? His gaze landed on my pride and joy. Hybrid roses I'd spent months perfecting. Their deep purple petals glimmered with silver edges as though dusted with moonlight. "They're my thesis project," I said, hastily inspecting the blooms for damage. "I'm developing resilient varieties for urban environments." "They're stunning," he murmured, and for the first time, I really saw him. Tall, sharp-suited, with warm eyes and a disarming smile. "I'm James, by the way, and I think you just saved my day. I need a unique gift for a client." I sold him 3 roses that day. A week later, he returned, not for flowers, but to ask me to dinner. Our love grew like a well-tended garden, steady, natural, and full of discovery. James worked in corporate finance, a world of sharp suits and strategic deals. But he appreciated the artistry of my work, and I began to admire the structure in his. "You see the world differently than anyone I've ever known," he told me one evening as we strolled through a botanical garden. A year later, we married in a simple ceremony adorned with flowers I'd grown just for the occasion. It was perfect until I met his family. The warning signs appeared early, at our engagement dinner. James's mother, Victoria Wheeler, scrutinized me with icy precision, while his sister Patricia barely hid her smirks. "A florist?" Victoria asked, her voice laden with disbelief. "I thought you said she studied sciences, James." "She has a master's in botanical sciences," James defended. "Emma's work is revolutionary." Victoria waved a dismissive hand. "Yes, but surely you won't continue with that little hobby after the wedding? The Wheeler name has certain standards." James tensed beside me, but I held my ground, recalling my grandmother's words. "Actually," I said evenly, "I'm opening my own shop after graduation. The lease is already signed." The silence was deafening. Patricia raised an eyebrow, her lips curling. "A shop? How entrepreneurial." "Well," Victoria sighed, "every family has its quirks. Just keep it discreet, dear." James squeezed my hand under the table, but he didn't speak up. It was the first crack in our otherwise perfect world. Over the next 2 years, I channeled my energy into my shop, a labor of love that Victoria despised. What none of them knew, not even James, was that I had a plan. During my master's program, I developed patented hybrids, disease-resistant, longer-lasting varieties that could thrive anywhere. Suppliers showed interest, but I played my cards close. "Emma, you've got to see this." Sarah burst into my office one morning, brandishing her tablet. Wheeler Corp just announced a sustainable luxury hotel initiative with rooftop gardens. I smiled, setting down my pruning shears. My in-laws had no idea that their grand vision was about to intersect with mine. That evening, James came home beaming. "Did you hear about the announcement? Dad's been working on this for months. It's going to transform the company." "That's wonderful," I said, arranging a bouquet of my special roses. "Mom's hosting a dinner to celebrate this weekend," he added hesitantly. "They want us there." I raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure your mother wants the shopkeeper at her event?" He ran a hand through his hair, his telltale sign of unease. "They're trying, Emma, please." Reluctantly, I agreed. That night, as I finalized a deal that would secure my hybrid's future, I received an email that made me smile. Everything was falling into place. The dinner was held at the Wheeler estate, a mansion dripping with opulence and thinly veiled contempt. Victoria greeted me with a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "How's your shop, dear?" Still managing to scrape by. The room chuckled politely. Patricia, now a senior executive, smirked into her glass. "It's quite really," she added. "We're working with top-tier experts for the hotel gardens, far beyond the scope of a retail shop." I smiled, unbothered. If only they knew. The dinner unfolded with its usual symphony of veiled barbs and carefully crafted insults. James remained uncomfortably quiet, his occasional apologetic glances doing little to shield me from the barrage. His silence, though familiar, was no less painful. "So Emma," Victoria said, her voice cutting through the room like fine crystal, "James tells me you're often at the shop late into the evening. It must be exhausting dealing with retail customers all day. Surely you've considered something more appropriate for a Wheeler." I set down my fork deliberately, meeting her gaze without flinching. "Actually, The dining room door creaked open, interrupting me. The sudden hush that fell over the table was palpable as everyone turned to see who had entered. Victoria's polished smile faltered the moment she recognized the man standing in the doorway. "Marcus," Victoria exclaimed, practically launching herself from her seat. "What an unexpected delight. We weren't expecting you until next week's board meeting." Marcus Chen, a commanding presence in any room, smiled politely, his sharp eyes sweeping across the table before landing on me. "I heard there was a celebration tonight. Thought I'd stop by. Hope I'm not intruding." Patricia, ever eager to align herself with power, quickly motioned to the empty seat beside her. "Not at all, Marcus. Please, join us. We were just discussing our exciting hotel project." "Ah, the Green Hotels Initiative," Marcus said, his tone betraying little. "Actually, that's part of why I'm here." His gaze returned to me, and his smile widened. "Emma, could we have a moment?" The silence was deafening. Victoria's carefully curated composure cracked as confusion etched across her face. "You know Emma?" Marcus laughed lightly. "Know her? Emma has been one of our most valuable partners for 2 years. Those revolutionary hybrid plants you're using in your hotel project? They're all her creations." Victoria's expression froze mid-smile. The room seemed to hold its collective breath. "That's impossible," Patricia stammered. "She runs a little flower shop." "A flower shop that's been ground zero for some of the most innovative botanical research in recent years," Marcus corrected smoothly. "Emma's hybrids are transformative, beautiful, resilient, and exactly what the Asian market demands. In fact, that's why I'm here tonight." He stepped forward, pulling an envelope from his jacket pocket. "The board approved your terms, Emma. We're ready to proceed with exclusive distribution rights for all 15 of your patented varieties." James finally broke his silence, his voice hoarse. "Emma, what's going on?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "Remember the hybrid varieties I worked on during grad school? The ones you said were incredible? I've been refining them ever since. Now, they're ready for mass production." "Mass production," Victoria echoed faintly, as if the words themselves were foreign. "Indeed," Marcus said, clearly enjoying himself. "Emma's hybrids are uniquely suited to luxury hotels and high-end developments. They're durable, exquisite, and most importantly, exclusive. The licensing fees alone are significant." Patricia's champagne flute slipped from her hand, shattering the silence as it hit the table. The deep red liquid spread across the immaculate tablecloth like a blood stain. No one moved to clean it. But you're just a florist," Victoria sputtered. "You arrange bouquets and water plants." "That shop," I said calmly, "has been my research and development lab. Every plant, every arrangement has been part of an experiment. We've collected years of data that's now invaluable." Marcus nodded. "Which is why we're not stopping with licensing. We'd like to fund your continued research, Emma. The board is prepared to offer a $50 million annual development budget." Victoria's face drained of color as her world unraveled. James stared at me as though seeing a stranger. Patricia's mouth opened and closed, no words escaping. Finally, Patricia found her voice. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Would you have believed me?" I asked evenly. "From the moment I joined this family, you've made it clear how you see me. As a simple shopkeeper, someone beneath you. What would change if I told you?" "But James knew, didn't he?" Victoria demanded, her tone accusatory as she turned to her son. James shook his head slowly. I didn't." "No," I said quietly. "You didn't? You saw what you wanted to see, just like the rest of your family." Marcus cleared his throat, reclaiming the room's attention. "There's one more thing. Given the importance of Emma's hybrids to the hotel project, we'd like her to oversee the entire supply chain. To that end, we're proposing to acquire controlling interest in Wheeler Corp's botanical division." Victoria's head snapped up, her carefully maintained composure cracking. "You want us to report to her?" "Actually," I interjected, "I already do. I finalized the purchase of Green Life Industries, your primary supplier, this morning." Chaos erupted. Patricia shouted about betrayal and corporate hierarchy, while Victoria collapsed back into her chair, clutching her fan as though it could revive her sinking pride. James said nothing, his silence louder than the clamor around us. "This is unacceptable." Victoria finally screeched. "James, you can't allow this." I turned to my husband, my voice calm but firm. "James hasn't been part of my business decisions, just as he's never been part of your constant belittling. He didn't speak up then, and I doubt he will now." "Emma," James began weakly, but I cut him off with a look. Marcus touched my shoulder gently. "Shall we?" he asked, holding the contracts in hand. As we left the dining room, Victoria's thin, strained voice followed us. "James, do something." But there was nothing left to do. The walls of their assumptions had crumbled, leaving only the truth they had refused to see. In my spacious office at Chen Agro Corp's Seattle headquarters, Marcus and I finalized the contracts. The city lights sparkled like distant stars, a reminder of how far I had come. "You could have told them sooner," Marcus said, watching me sign the final document. "Would it have made a difference?" I asked. They needed this moment to understand the cost of underestimating someone. "And James?" I hesitated, the pen hovering over the page. "That's a conversation for another day." When I returned home, James was waiting, his silhouette framed by the darkened window. "Were you ever going to tell me?" he asked, his voice low. "Would you have listened?" I countered. "Or would you have seen only what your family sees?" "That's not fair," he said, his voice breaking. "I loved you for who you are." "Did you?" I asked quietly. "Or did you love the idea of the wife who made you look broad-minded? The florist you could see past?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The weeks following that fateful dinner party marked a seismic shift, not only for Wheeler Corp, but for the lives orbiting its influence. News of the revelation spread like wildfire through Seattle's corporate circles, altering alliances and reshaping the power dynamics of an elite that prided itself on appearances. Victoria Wheeler, ever the consummate society strategist, launched a campaign to salvage her reputation. Emma always had promise, she declared at a high-profile charity gala, her voice strategically loud. We simply believed in giving her space to realize it. Though I wasn't present, Sarah, my shop manager and newfound informant, relished relaying such moments. She came by the shop, Sarah reported one morning, barely suppressing her laughter. Asked if she could join our exclusive client list. I looked up from the research report I was reviewing. "What did you say?" "That we're no longer taking retail clients," Sarah grinned. You should have seen her face. Patricia, meanwhile, found her once unquestioned authority at Wheeler Corp eroding rapidly. Board members who had previously dismissed my contributions now sought my guidance on critical decisions. Her attempts to reassert control were met with quiet, decisive corrections. At our first official board meeting, I reviewed her proposal for the hotel gardens. These maintenance projections are outdated, I pointed out, displaying comparative data on the screen. The hybrids require specialized care. Unless you prefer, we use standard varieties, which would undermine the exclusivity we've marketed. Patricia's cheeks flushed as she sat back in her chair, silenced by the weight of evidence. While corporate battles played out in boardrooms, a quieter, more personal reckoning unfolded at home. James and I circled each other warily, the foundations of our marriage unsettled. One evening, I found him in my home office, staring at the framed patents on the wall. "I remember when you created this," he said, his fingers brushing the glass. "I thought they were just pretty flowers." "They were never just flowers, James," I said. "They were my dreams, my future, and I tried to share them with you." He turned, guilt and frustration etched into his features. "Why didn't you trust me with the truth?" "Because trust isn't silence," I replied. "Every time your family dismissed me, every time they belittled my work, you said nothing. That silence told me everything I needed to know. I was trying to keep the peace." "No," I said softly. "You were taking the easy way out." The next day brought an unexpected visitor. Richard Wheeler, usually the quiet observer, stood at my office door. "May I come in?" he asked. I gestured to the chair opposite me, curious. "I owe you an apology," he began. "For 2 years, I've watched as Victoria and Patricia undermined you, and I said nothing. That was wrong." "Why now?" I asked, wary. His expression softened with regret. "Because you've done what I never had the courage to do. Challenge the Wheeler way of doing things. This company needs leadership, not legacy." He handed me a folder. "I'm stepping down as chairman. I'd like to recommend you as my successor." I blinked, stunned. "That's unexpected." "You've already proven yourself," he said simply. Before I could respond, James burst into the room, his argument with my assistant echoing through the hallway. He froze when he saw his father. "Dad, what are you doing here?" Richard stood, straightening his tie. The right thing for once. After Richard left, I explained the situation to James. He sank into a chair, overwhelmed. "Chairman of Wheeler Corp," he murmured. "Why are you here, James?" I asked gently. He looked up, his eyes filled with a mix of determination and vulnerability. "I've been doing a lot of thinking. About us. About me. For years, I've lived as the perfect Wheeler son, never questioning anything. And in doing so, I failed you. I want to make it right." "How?" I asked. "I've requested a transfer to the Asian division," he said. "If you'll have me, I want to go with you. Not as the Wheeler heir, but as your partner." Tears pricked my eyes. "You'd leave everything here." "Everything I'm leaving is meaningless without you," he said simply. 2 months later, Victoria hosted another dinner party. I wasn't there, of course. James and I were in Singapore, overseeing the installation of my hybrid gardens in a flagship luxury hotel. Sarah sent me a video from the event. Victoria, tipsy and effusive, regaling guests with tales of her brilliant daughter-in-law. Patricia, meanwhile, had taken a position at a rival firm, unwilling to endure the company's new dynamics. Richard, now serving as an advisor, worked alongside me to steer Wheeler Corp into its next chapter. As our plane descended into Singapore's glittering skyline, James reached for my hand. "Ready for our new adventure?" he asked. I smiled, squeezing his hand. "Always." The real triumph wasn't in proving anyone wrong or claiming titles. It was in staying true to myself, nurturing my dreams through the storms of judgment and doubt. My little flower shop had bloomed into a legacy beyond what anyone imagined, except perhaps me, because I had always believed that with care, patience, and resilience, even the smallest seed could transform into something extraordinary.
My sister-in-law, now mute and bedridden, was entrusted to my care by my in-laws, who had decided to take a vacation in Hawaii. Just before departing, my husband Jack made it clear that taking care of her was my responsibility, emphasizing that I shouldn't slack off. As soon as Jack and his family left for their vacation, my sister-in-law, surprisingly, sat up and suggested that we get going too. My name is Lisa, and at 29, I had abandoned my teenage dream of becoming a pop star, realizing its fleeting nature. I ended up in my late 20s, dating Jack, whom I met through a friend, largely due to my mother's persistent desire to see her grandchild. Jack, despite having once aspired to enter the entertainment industry, now worked at a prestigious trading company in downtown Manhattan. After college, I had worked at a bank until I got married, at which point I quit my job. On a visit to Jack's parents' house, I learned about his younger sister Lucy, who, as a child, had contracted encephalitis from influenza, leaving her mute and bedridden due to brain damage. Lucy's mother had primarily cared for her, but surprisingly, Lucy and I got along well, communicating through sign language. Over time, I naturally picked up sign language, and our bond strengthened. Despite this, my mother-in-law, who was quite different from Lucy, was consistently sarcastic and critical of me. Jack and I lived in a condo about 30 minutes away, yet my mother-in-law would occasionally show up unannounced, nitpicking and issuing traditional instructions like keeping Jack's shoes clean and neatly folding laundry. She referred to Jack as Jackie and insisted on outdated practices, such as not going to bed before him, regardless of how late he got home. During our dating and early marriage days, Jack had always been kind and never disagreed with me, despite his mother's influence. Initially, Jack was incredibly considerate. If I mentioned feeling unwell and suggested having dinner outside, he readily agreed. Likewise, if I expressed interest in a designer bag, he would purchase it for me the following month. However, approximately a year into our marriage, Jack began to change, or perhaps reverted to his former self. He started coming home late from work, consistently smelling of alcohol. On weekends, Jack claimed increasing work responsibilities, making him too busy for family time. Oddly, even during visits to his parents' home, he would decline my invitations to join him. Frustrated, I decided to confront him about the growing distance between us. "Jack, you've become so distant lately. It feels like you're a completely different person," I expressed. Jack glared briefly before dismissing my concerns. "That's not true. You're overthinking things," he replied. Unconvinced, I pointed out that he rarely spoke to me anymore. He told me to stop bringing it up and walked away, ending the conversation abruptly. One Sunday, Jack surprised me by announcing he was going home. This was a departure from his usual refusal to have me accompany him on such visits. Eagerly, I offered to join him, expressing a desire to see Lucy as well. Jack's reaction was mixed, and he remarked on our seemingly close friendship. Despite his subtle grimace, I drove us to Jack's family home in Nebraska. Along the way, we stopped at a bakery to buy pastries as a gift. Jack's mother, who typically frowned at my presence, lit up upon receiving the pastries. When we arrived, she greeted us with a frown, as if displeased to see me. Undeterred, I handed her the pastries, and her expression changed like a child receiving a cherished toy. Curious about Jack's father, I inquired about him, learning he was out at a meeting. Jack's mother asked if I needed something, to which I replied that I didn't, just having something on my mind. He replied, "I hadn't heard anything about this from Jack. What's going on? Did you have something to tell your father?" I asked. Jack retorted, "It's none of your business." "What do you mean? We're a married couple, aren't we? Can you just stop nagging?" His mother chimed in, "Exactly. If Jack doesn't want to tell you something, you shouldn't be prying." Recognizing the futility of arguing, I chose not to respond. Just then, Jack's sister appeared. "Oh, Jack, you're here," she said. Jack seized the opportunity, saying, "Sis, perfect timing. I have something to discuss." She inquired, "What is it?" Jack proposed. "I can take a long vacation next month. I was thinking about a family trip to Hawaii. How about you, sis?" She replied, "I'll pass. I don't have a passport." I was taken aback. Jack, usually busy with work, was suggesting a trip to Hawaii. Concerned, I asked, "Jack, is everything all right with your job?" His mother seemed displeased with my involvement and said, "You shouldn't meddle with decisions Jack has made." "You're really nosy, aren't you?" Jack's mother then revealed the real reason for the meeting. I was to take care of Lucy during their vacation. Though momentarily surprised, I realized staying with Lucy was more appealing than going to Hawaii with my mother-in-law. I agreed to take care of Lucy, but I questioned why they had to bring me all the way there for such a discussion. Jack explained he expected resistance and wanted his mother to convince me forcefully if needed. Dumbfounded, I left the room to go to Lucy's room. Lucy was delighted to see me and asked how I'd been. When I explained Jack asked me to come along to their parents' house, Lucy remarked on Jack's change in behavior. Lucy suggested I stay over, and we had a great time chatting. An hour later, Jack came to get me, and we headed home. Lucy gave me a slight wink, hinting at a shocking truth and an even more shocking plan. A month later, on the day of the Hawaii trip, Jack and I went to his parents' house. Despite not going to Hawaii, I brought luggage to stay with Lucy for a week. As departure neared, the family insisted that taking care of Lucy was my job, and my mother-in-law added, "Please get along well with Lucy. It's better for you to stay here, isn't it? If anything happens to Lucy, it's all your fault." Unfazed, I returned to Lucy's room. At that moment, Lucy sprang up energetically and called out, "Come on, let's get going." This echoed a recent conversation where Lucy revealed she could walk and converse, a secret she had kept since last year. "I suppose, why have you been hiding this from the rest of the family?" Lucy began sharing an unexpected tale, saying, "Actually, my father and mother are both remarried. I'm my dad's child from his previous marriage, and my sister and brother are from my mom's side." Surprised by this revelation, and considering the usual coldness from my mother-in-law towards Lucy, I couldn't help but think, "I thought so. Is that so?" Lucy confirmed, "Yeah, my mom despises me. And I didn't want to talk to her, so I pretended that I couldn't." Curious about her father's knowledge, I asked, "And your father?" Lucy explained, "Dad knows everything. He's always on my side." Understanding the situation, I said, "I see. That's why, regarding this trip to Hawaii, I'm thinking we should go too." Perplexed, I asked, What do you mean?" Lucy explained, "I mean, I'm planning to go to Hawaii on the same day with you. We'll even stay at the same resort." Her proposal caught me completely off guard, and I responded, "What? I'd be thrilled to go to Hawaii with you, Lucy. But do you even have a passport?" Confidently, Lucy revealed, "Of course. I secretly got my passport last month. And don't worry about the expenses. My dad is covering our plane tickets and the resort, including yours." Excited about the unexpected turn of events, I said, "I see. I'm really looking forward to this." That's how we ended up at the airport, Lucy and I, arriving in Hawaii early in the morning. My father-in-law, who had been supportive, was there to see us off. Expressing gratitude, I said, "Thank you, father-in-law. I feel guilty for all the plane tickets and resort fees you've covered." He reassured me, saying, "Don't worry about it. As long as you two have fun, I'm happy." After landing, we took a taxi from the airport and checked into the resort hotel. Lucy and I were sharing a room, and as we settled in, I mentioned to Lucy, "Your father seems pretty well-traveled." Lucy shared, "Yeah, he's been on several international business trips. He's even been to Hawaii a few times." Planning a surprise for Jack and the family, Lucy said, "So what's the plan? I'm guessing my mom and everyone will dine at the restaurant here tonight. I'm thinking of surprising them." Excited about the idea, I replied, "That sounds like fun. I'm excited. Should we get some rest to recover from jet lag?" Lucy agreed. That sounds like a good idea. Unable to sleep on the plane, we took a shower, climbed into bed, and quickly fell asleep. Waking up around late afternoon, Lucy was already awake and starting to wear makeup. Apologizing for sleeping too much, I reassured her, "No, don't worry about it. I just woke up too." We really had a good sleep, didn't we? Fully recharged and ready for our battle. Around 7 o'clock, I suggested, I'll go and check the restaurant. As I looked for Jack and his party, I found them dining joyfully from the shadows near the entrance. Venturing deeper into the restaurant, I spotted the back of a young woman I didn't recognize. This puzzled me, as there hadn't been such a woman when they left Jack's parents' house. Straining my ears, I could intermittently hear Jack and my mother-in-law's voices. I'm glad it's not that woman today. Yeah, I really drew the short straw. She's tainted my family record. If only we had an elegant daughter like her from the start. I want to divorce her and start fresh soon. Try to find a reason for the divorce and extract hefty alimony from that woman. Even without a cause for the divorce, it's fine. I can fabricate as many as I want. She's so bad that I want to throw her in the trash. I want to see my grandchild from you and her. My mother-in-law was giving the woman a smile she had never shown me before. I was driven by the urge to step forward and see the woman's fate, but I held it in. I returned to my room and told Lucy that it took a while. I'm sorry, I saw something shocking. Jack brought a woman that I've never seen before. What? I was about to scream. Jack and my mother-in-law were continuously bad-mouthing me, and Jack even said he would find a reason for divorce. That's terrible. Jack called me a bad catch, but seeing him with another woman, I felt relieved. Now I can divorce him outright. That's a good thing. Shall we make our entrance then? Lucy and I headed towards the restaurant hall. When we entered the restaurant, we requested to sit near Jack's table and were able to get a seat quite close to them. They didn't notice our arrival as we were sitting quite close. We could hear their conversation, which was still filled with derogatory comments about me. I was amazed and ended up giving a bitter smile at how they could badmouth me indefinitely. Seeing my face, Lucy gave a nod with a smile, a cue for us to begin our counterattack. I stood up from my seat, stepped forward towards Jack, and shouted, "Are you all having a good time?" I'll never forget the look on Jack and my mother-in-law's faces at that moment. Their mouths agape and eyes wide open, they froze for a few seconds. After a few seconds, my mother-in-law finally spoke. "Why are you here? And how did Lucy get here without a wheelchair?" At her words, Lucy stood up, gave my mother-in-law a smile, and said, "I don't need a wheelchair. Thanks to you, my body and speech have returned to normal. I must have caused you quite a bit of trouble for a long time. Lucy, when did you regain your ability to speak?" "I wonder when that was. Maybe last year." "Then why did you hide it until now?" "Because it was better if you guys continued to believe that I couldn't speak. You and Jack were speaking ill of me earlier, weren't you?" My mother-in-law's face turned pale in an instant. "What do you mean?" she asked. "Yeah, we weren't saying anything bad about you, Lisa," Jack retorted. "That won't work. I recorded everything on my phone. Do you want me to play it back right now?" I countered. My mother-in-law fell silent, but Jack stood up. "Lisa, you've been causing me trouble all this time, and now you're making these outrageous claims," he barked. Jack was the one making absurd claims, so I retaliated. "Once I return back home, I'll immediately contact my lawyer to initiate our divorce procedure. You can't deny the fact that you're on a vacation abroad with another woman. Plus, you described being with me as drawing a blank lottery ticket. So, I expect you to demonstrate sincerity by paying a hefty compensation for that comment," I declared. At my words, my mother-in-law seemed to acknowledge her defeat, and her attitude abruptly changed. "Lisa, dear, I really like you. Please try to get along with Jack. This woman is not involved with Jack," she pleaded. "I'm sorry, but I can't do that. Since I am a blank lottery ticket, I cannot live with Jack. Please enjoy your time with this woman. Oh, and I might also seek compensation from her." "Isn't that exciting?" I smirked. The woman in question turned pale and began to tremble upon hearing my words. Unfazed by the public gaze, Jack fell to his knees and pleaded, "Lisa, I beg you, don't make this a big deal." "My company has strict rules about this," he implored. "What's that?" "You don't sound sorry at all," I replied. Jack appeared taken aback, then tried again. "Lisa, I beg you. Forgive me. If my company finds out, I'll lose my job," he confessed. "Though your place sounds better now, I will never forgive you. You are married, and yet here you are on an overseas trip with another woman," I said firmly. Upon hearing my words, my mother-in-law also fell to her knees next to Jack, pleading, "Please forgive my son," tears streaming down her face. By this time, all the other customers were watching us, and the restaurant manager started walking towards our table. Seeing this, I got up and said, "Well, Lucy and I will head back to our room. You all enjoy your Hawaiian vacation. I guess things will get a bit difficult when you get back home." Hearing this, Jack cried out at the top of his lungs, "Please forgive me. I can't afford to pay any compensation." At his loud outburst, the restaurant manager frowned, instructed something to a nearby staff member, and then briskly told Jack something. It was a polite way of telling him that he was disturbing the other guests and needed to leave. However, Jack was taken aback, not understanding the manager's words. Soon, 2 buffed-up security guards arrived and hauled Jack away. Jack was sobbing and struggling, but he was no match for the 2 bulky men. My mother-in-law and the woman were dumbfounded, unable to utter a word, while Lucy and I were also surprised by the turn of events. I thought Jack got what he deserved. A week later, Lucy and I returned home. Jack was quickly released and seemed to have returned to his room. However, I later heard that he had been in a state of shock since returning to his room and had kept to himself until the end of the trip. The day after I returned home, I went to the law firm where my old college friend worked to request a divorce proceeding. Unfortunately, my friend was not present, but a female lawyer was assigned to me, who was very easy to talk to. I was able to explain everything that had happened. After listening to my story, she'd assured me that a divorce was possible, that I could claim alimony, and that she would investigate the woman who was with Jack in Hawaii before determining whether I could claim alimony from her as well. A month later, the female lawyer contacted me and informed me that it had been proved that Jack had been dating the other woman for about 6 months. Hence, she said it was possible for me to demand alimony from this woman too. I requested the female lawyer, "Please squeeze as much alimony as you can from Jack and his woman." She smiled and nodded. 2 months later, I was officially divorced, and into my bank account was deposited the alimony from the 2. I mumbled as I saw the amount, and that's karma for calling me a blank lottery ticket. 3 months later, Jack and my mother-in-law suddenly visited my place. Despite it being only 3 months, they had lost a lot of weight and looked completely haggard. I asked them, "What do you want? I don't want to see your faces." Jack replied in a thin voice, "I'm sorry. Could you lend me some money? I've lost my job," and the woman ran away. I don't even have money for food. My mother-in-law also spoke in a whisper. I've divorced my husband too. I don't have money. Please, I beg you. My mother-in-law was in tears. I responded, "Too bad. I have absolutely no obligation to help you. And even if I did, I would never help you guys out. Now please leave." After they left, I sprinkled a large amount of salt at my entrance to get rid of bad energy from my house.
Growing up in a family of restaurateurs, I quickly learned that food was more than just nourishment. It was an art form, a legacy, and a powerful way to bring people together. My grandmother's small noodle shop in Chinatown had sustained our family for 3 generations. Watching her expertly craft dishes in the tiny kitchen shaped my understanding of the world. "Remember, May," she'd say, her hands skillfully folding dumplings. "Good food comes from the heart, not just the ingredients." I internalized those words, spending countless hours in the kitchen, absorbing not only recipes but the business wisdom that had helped our family navigate tough times. What no one knew was that I was also pursuing an online MBA, studying late into the night after the restaurant had closed. During the day, I mastered the delicate balance of flavors and the importance of fresh ingredients. At night, I delved into market analysis, business strategy, and corporate finance. My ambition extended beyond running a restaurant. I aimed to revolutionize the food industry. Then, I met James. He walked into our restaurant one rainy Tuesday evening, seeking refuge from the storm. Tall, impeccably dressed, and distinctly out of place, he immediately caught my attention. "What would you recommend?" he asked, water dripping from his expensive coat. "Our hand-pulled noodles with braised beef," I replied without hesitation. "It's perfect for a night like this." He smiled, a smile that made my heart skip a beat. "I trust your judgment." 20 minutes later, I watched as he took his first bite. His eyes widened in surprise, then closed in delight. When they opened again, they locked onto mine. "This is incredible," he said. "I've never tasted anything like it." That moment marked the beginning of our story. James became a regular, visiting 3 times a week, always trying something new. Our conversations began with food but quickly expanded to everything else. He worked in finance at a major investment firm, while I shared stories about the restaurant, carefully omitting my MBA and larger ambitions. 6 months later, he proposed, simple and intimate, just us in the restaurant after closing, over a bowl of the noodles he first tasted. Meeting his family was a different story. The Chens were old money, with a business empire encompassing restaurants, hotels, and real estate. James's father, Richard Chen, was CEO of Chen Global Hospitality, one of Asia's largest luxury hotel and restaurant groups. His mother, Victoria, embodied old-world elegance, while his sister, Amanda, was the company's director of operations. From the start, it was clear I didn't fit their ideal image of a daughter-in-law. A small restaurant? Victoria's perfectly manicured eyebrows arched during our first meeting. How quaint. Amanda's disdain was more overt. "James, you can't be serious. We're Chens. We own restaurant chains, not street food stalls." James squeezed my hand under the table but remained silent, a red flag I chose to overlook. The engagement dinner was a subtle exercise in humiliation. Held at the Chen's flagship restaurant, the Imperial Palace, it was clear they viewed me as an outsider. "My dear," Victoria called across the table, "it's fascinating that you work in food service. Do you cook everything yourself, or do you have actual chefs?" Before I could respond, Amanda added, "Mother, be kind. I'm sure she does her best with what she has. Not everyone can afford proper culinary training." Drawing on years of customer service experience, I maintained my composure. "I trained under my grandmother." "Whoa. Oh, how sweet," Victoria interrupted. "Family recipes. James, remember our cooking class in Paris with the Michelin-starred chef?" James chuckled uncomfortably. "Mother, please." But the most painful part wasn't their condescension. It was James's silence. He never once defended me or our relationship. What they didn't know was that, while managing my tiny restaurant, I had completed my MBA with honors and developed an AI-driven food service platform poised to revolutionize the industry. My company, Food Tech Solutions, was already valued at over $3 billion, operating in stealth mode. I had kept this private, wanting to be judged for who I was, not what I owned. But as wedding preparations began, it became clear that the Chens would never accept me. The breaking point came during a family dinner at Victoria's mansion. I brought some of my signature dishes to share my heritage. Victoria wrinkled her nose at the containers. "Oh, he brought takeout." "Actually, I made these myself," I said proudly. "They're my grandmother's recipes." Amanda prodded the food with her fork. "How authentic. But for the wedding, we should stick to proper catering. We have a reputation to maintain." James, beside me, focused intently on his phone. "The wedding menu is settled," Victoria announced. "Chef Pierre from Paris will cater. We can have street food at a Chen wedding." "My food isn't," I began, but Victoria raised a hand. "My dear, understand that the Chens are more than a family. We're a brand. Your little restaurant is charming, but it's not up to our standards. After the wedding, we could help you find a more suitable occupation." My phone buzzed. It was an alert. Chen Global Hospitality stock had plummeted 30% in after-hours trading due to leaked quarterly losses and potential fraud in their restaurant division. Victoria turned ashen. Amanda frantically typed, and Richard barked orders into his phone. James turned to me, pale. I need to go to the office. Family emergency. I stood calmly. Actually, I think I can help. Everyone froze. Help? Amanda sneered, though her voice wavered. Unless you can conjure $500 million, your noodle expertise isn't relevant. I pulled my laptop from my bag. Actually, I'd like to show you something. Victoria waved a dismissive hand. May, dear, this is hardly the time for food tech solutions, I interjected calmly, turning my laptop around to face them. Have you heard of it? The color drained from Amanda's face. Of course she had. Every major player in the hospitality industry knew about the enigmatic tech company revolutionizing restaurant operations worldwide. Richard lowered his phone, eyes narrowing. What about it? I founded it 3 years ago, I said simply. It's currently valued at $3.2 billion. And yes, Amanda, I can produce that $500 million you need, and more. A heavy silence fell over the room. James gaped at me. But you run a small restaurant. I run several things, James. The restaurant is my passion. Food tech solutions is where my business acumen thrives. I turned to Victoria. Those street food recipes you mocked are the foundation of an AI-driven menu optimization system now used by 5-star restaurants worldwide. Richard leaned forward, his earlier disdain replaced by keen interest. You're saying you're the CEO of Food Tech Solutions, the company every hospitality group is chasing. The same, I confirmed, pulling up our financials. We're in stealth mode but plan to go public next quarter. Our AI platform revolutionizes everything from inventory management to customer preference prediction. Something your company desperately needs right now. I gestured to Amanda's laptop, showing their dismal financial report. Victoria's hand trembled as she set down her wine glass. But why didn't you tell us? She asked, voice faltering. Would it have made a difference? I asked softly. Would it have made me more worthy of respect? More suitable as a daughter-in-law? The fact that you're even asking speaks volumes. Amanda's face reddened with anger. You expect us to believe you, a restaurant owner, built a billion-dollar tech company in secret? I displayed a screen of patents and proprietary algorithms. Your crisis stems from outdated systems and manual inventory management. These are exactly the issues my technology solves. Richard's business instincts flared. We should discuss this privately, perhaps over dinner at the Imperial. No, I cut in. We'll discuss it here, where you've belittled me for months. You've made it clear I'm not good enough for your family. James finally spoke. May, why didn't you tell me? I looked at him, a profound sadness settling in. I wanted you to stand up for me for who I am, not for what I own. But you never did. Victoria tried to recover. Darling, you must understand. We have standards. Yes, you've made those standards clear, I said firmly. Now let me set mine. Chen Global Hospitality is on the brink of collapse. I can help, but there will be conditions. Amanda's eyes darkened. Conditions? This is blackmail. No, Amanda, this is business. I stood smoothing my dress. You've treated me like I'm beneath you. Now you need my help. Can your pride handle that? Richard's tone turned conciliatory. Name your conditions. First, a complete reorganization of your management. Your leadership is incompetent. I glanced at Amanda, who sputtered indignantly. Second, full implementation of Food Tech Solutions systems across all properties. Your outdated methods are bleeding money. Third, I continued, a public acknowledgement of our partnership and the fact that I, owner of that little restaurant, saved Chen Global Hospitality. Victoria gasped. You can't expect us to. I can. Your stock is in free fall. By morning, you'll have lost half your market value. Your investors are already calling for heads to roll. James reached for my hand. May, please, let's talk. I pulled away. We need to discuss our relationship, James. The room grew silent again. You've let your family insult me, my heritage, and my work for months. You've laughed with them, sat quietly, and never stood up for me. Even tonight, your first instinct was to flee to the office instead of defending me. Tears welled in my eyes, but my voice stayed steady. I don't need a partner who only values me for my wealth. I need someone who would defend me when I had nothing. Victoria rose, her composure slipping. Now see here. No, you see here. I cut her off. I hope to be accepted for who I am. Instead, you've shown me who you are. Accept my terms and save your company or let your pride destroy it. I gather my things, including the untouched containers of my street food. You have until tomorrow morning to decide. My team will be in touch. As I walked to the door, Amanda called out, "You can't just walk away. This is our legacy." I turned one last time, "Yes, and you've run it into the ground. If you had focused on innovation instead of judgment, you wouldn't be here." The last thing I saw was James's stricken face, Victoria's trembling hands, and Richard's calculating stare. Their empire was crumbling, and their only hope lay in the woman they had deemed unworthy. Sometimes, karma wears a business suit and carries recipes in takeout containers. The next morning, in my sleek penthouse office overlooking the city, I reviewed our latest ad data. My phone buzzed incessantly. Messages from James, Richard's lawyers, and finally, Victoria herself. My assistant, Sarah, entered with a fresh cup of green tea. The Chen family is in the lobby. All of them. I checked my watch. 7:30 a.m., right on schedule. Give them 10 minutes, then send them up. Those 10 minutes mattered. A negotiation lesson from my grandmother. Let them wait, she'd say. Anxiety seasons any dish. When they finally entered my office, their transformation was stark. Victoria's aristocratic poise had crumbled, Amanda's designer outfit seemed hastily thrown together, and Richard's face wore the strain of a sleepless night. James lingered at the back, looking utterly lost. "The paperwork is ready," I said without preamble, gesturing toward the documents on the conference table. "Shall we begin?" Richard stepped forward. "Before we start, I want to say..." "Save it," I interrupted. "This is a business meeting, nothing more. Your company is hemorrhaging value by the minute. Let's focus on that." For the next 2 hours, we methodically went through the terms. Food Tech Solutions would acquire a 40% stake in Chang Global Hospitality in exchange for emergency funding and the full implementation of our systems. Amanda would step down as Director of Operations, to be replaced by someone from my team. "This is highway robbery," Amanda sputtered, but Richard silenced her with a glare. "It's more than fair," I replied calmly. "You're getting cutting-edge technology, immediate financial stability, and a partnership that will elevate your market value. In return, I gained partial ownership of a company in desperate need of modernization." Victoria, who had remained unusually quiet, finally spoke. "And what about James?" I met her gaze steadily. "James is not part of this discussion. Business and personal matters should remain separate, something your family never seemed to grasp." James stepped forward. "May, please. Can we talk privately?" I considered for a moment before nodding. 5 minutes. The rest of you can review the documents with my legal team." In my private office, James paced nervously. "Why didn't you tell me about any of this?" "Would it have changed anything?" I asked. "Would you have stood up to your family sooner? Defended my little restaurant against their constant criticism?" I was trying to keep the peace. "No, James. You were choosing the path of least resistance. Each time your family insulted me, my heritage, my work, you chose silence. That silence said everything." He ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. "I love you, May. Isn't that enough?" "Love without respect isn't love, James. It's convenience." I stood up. "Your family's company is in crisis because they refuse to adapt, to see value in different perspectives. You're not so different." "Give me another chance," he pleaded. "Now that I understand." "That's the problem," I cut in. "You only want another chance because now you know I'm wealthy and successful. But I'm the same person I was yesterday, running my little restaurant with pride. If you couldn't love and respect that person, you don't deserve to know this one." Back in the conference room, the documents were ready for signing. Richard's hand trembled slightly as he signed away 40% of his family's legacy. Victoria watched with tears in her eyes, while Amanda sat stiffly, barely containing her fury. As the papers were notarized, I made one final announcement. "One more thing. My grandmother's restaurant, it's not for sale at any price. It will continue operating exactly as it has for 3 generations. But surely with your resources," Victoria began. "That restaurant is my heritage, my heart. It's everything you looked down on, everything you mocked. And it will remain exactly as it is. A reminder that success doesn't always wear a designer label or come with a luxury brand name. Over the next 6 months, Chin Global Hospitality underwent a complete transformation. Our AI systems revolutionized their operations, cutting costs while improving service quality. Their stock not only recovered but soared to new heights. The press loved the story. A traditional family business saved by innovative technology from an unexpected source. James sent flowers, letters, even tried to visit the restaurant. I returned the flowers, left the letters unopened, and had security politely escort him out. Some bridges, once burned, should stay that way. 1 year later, I sat in my grandmother's kitchen, showing her the latest financial reports. Chin Global Hospitality had doubled in value, and Food Tech Solutions was now worth over $5 billion. "Ah, but how's the broth?" she asked, tasting the day's soup. I smiled, understanding her point. Success wasn't about the numbers, it was about staying true to yourself, your values, your heritage. The restaurant was packed as usual, with a line stretching around the block. Victoria had come by once, months ago, presumably to make amends. She waited in line like everyone else, ate quietly in a corner, and left a generous tip. She never returned, but the gesture was noted. Amanda had moved to Europe, unable to face the humiliation of working under my management team. Richard adapted surprisingly well, finally acknowledging that tradition needed to walk hand in hand with innovation. And James, last I heard, he was dating a socialite his mother approved of. Some people never learn. As for me, I split my time between running a global tech company and making noodles in my grandmother's kitchen. Both brought me joy in different ways, both were equally important parts of who I am. The media often asked about the contrast, a billionaire tech CEO who still works in a small restaurant kitchen. They didn't understand that the restaurant wasn't just a business, it was a reminder of where I came from, who I am, and what truly matters. One evening, as I was closing up the restaurant, a young girl peeked into the kitchen. "Are you really the lady who owns all those big hotels now?" I smiled, handing her a freshly made dumpling. "No, sweetheart, I'm just the lady who makes really good noodles. Everything else is just business." The Chen family thought they were teaching me a lesson about status and worth. Instead, they learned a costly lesson about judgment and pride. Sometimes the most valuable things in life come in the simplest packages, and the most powerful people are those who don't need to prove their power. As my grandmother always said, good food comes from the heart, not just the ingredients. The same is true of success. It comes from integrity, not just assets. I still have the takeout containers from that last dinner at the Chen mansion. They sit in my office as a reminder. Never let anyone shame you for who you are, and never compromise your values for those who can't see your worth. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't serving a cold dish, it's serving a perfectly prepared one. Seasoned with success, garnished with grace, and served with a side of karmic justice.
A factory worker father hurriedly excused himself upon her announcement. As soon as she uttered those words, my stepmother, with a wicked grin, impulsively splashed tea onto my dad's face. Beside her, she burst into laughter. Surprisingly, my stepfather made no effort to reprimand her. The stain on the suit my dad had meticulously cleaned for this occasion rapidly expanded. Fortunately, the tea was lukewarm, nearly cold, alleviating concerns about burns. Amidst my astonishment, I handed a napkin to my dad while Tom, in a panic, tried to dry his father-in-law's suit. Even in the midst of worrying about potential injuries, Tom couldn't help but laugh at the absurd behavior of his parents. Throughout this chaos, my dad remained silent, stood upright, and pointed at them, declaring, "Well then, I'll just ruin your company." The unfamiliar sternness in his voice caught me off guard. He took my hand, and we left the chaotic scene behind. Tom scolded his parents before quickly joining us. "I'm really sorry, father-in-law. I'll make my parents apologize later." He apologized, but my dad, with a grave tone, reassured him, "No need. We're done with them anyway." He patted Tom's shoulder as we walked away from the tumultuous O'Connor household. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Yvonne Warner, a 26-year-old office worker. Raised by my single father after losing my mother at a young age, I admired his dedication to both work and family. My father, in charge of a factory, managed to attend all my school events, even if he had to rush back to work afterward. In college, I met Tham, 2 years my senior, who was gentle, sincere, and polite. Despite his popularity, he accepted my confession, but there were concerns about his relationship with his parents, which he didn't elaborate on. We continued to date, and although Tham lived alone, he occasionally visited his parents, always looking exhausted afterward. Tham prioritized me in our relationship, and I was proud of him. I wanted to introduce him to my dad, and when the day finally came, it was a mix of fear and excitement. Surprisingly, my dad and Tham got along well, and I felt relieved to see the two important men in my life getting along. Yet Tham's odd excitement after the meeting left me puzzled, and he evaded any further questions about it. As Tham and I had seemingly hit it off with my dad, I couldn't shake off a growing worry that perhaps Tham's feelings were not as positive as he claimed. This anxiety lingered, leading Tham to request an important conversation a few days later. Nervously anticipating the discussion about our recent encounter with my dad, I met Tham at the agreed-upon cafe. Upon reaching the cafe, I noticed Tham already seated, his face wearing a gloomy expression visible through the glass. Suppressing my own anxiety, I approached him with a cheerful greeting. "Tham, sorry, did you wait long?" I softly spoke as I reached him. Startled by my touch on his shoulder, Tham exclaimed, "Whoa, Ivan, you scared me." After a deep breath, he continued, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to startle you. Please, have a seat." Sitting across from Tham, I ordered from the waiter, my concern mounting as Tham's downcast expression persisted. Hoping to encourage him to share his thoughts, I spoke up, "Hey, Tham, what's bothering you so much? Is there something wrong with my dad?" Tham, taken aback by the direct question, denied any issue with my dad, stating, "Absolutely not. I respect your dad. It's just that my. He trailed off, avoiding eye contact. Sensing the need to delve deeper, I sighed and pressed him. "If you're worried about something, I want to know what's on your mind." Tham took a deep breath, as if preparing himself, and began to disclose a shocking revelation. According to him, his parents were judgmental and lacked class, constantly interfering in his life. When he introduced a girlfriend, his parents would criticize her on the spot, leading to tearful breakups. Tham desired to marry me but was troubled by the prospect of involving his parents in our marriage. Assuring him that we didn't have to include them in our union, I suggested enduring their presence during the wedding formalities. Reminding him that my dad liked him, I thought the matter was settled, but Tham had more to share. He revealed that when he met my dad, he was surprised by the stark contrast to his own parents. Expressing a desire to become the son of such a great man, Tham shared his dilemma about marriage. While he was pleased that my dad liked him, he couldn't decide whether his parents should also become his in-laws. Tham brightened momentarily but sighed deeply afterward. In a moment of realization, Tham looked up and apologized. He proposed a unique solution. When we meet his parents for our marriage, could my dad come along? Tham hoped that the presence of someone so respectable might eventually influence his parents positively. I agreed to discuss it with my dad, but I couldn't help expressing my wish that Tham had approached the conversation differently. Understanding his misstep, Tham quickly apologized and then, with newfound determination, formally proposed marriage to me. Swiftly deciding to discuss the matter with my father, who was initially hesitant, I approached him with Tham when he formally asked for my hand in marriage. After obtaining my father's agreement, Tham and I arranged a date to meet his parents. On the appointed day, dressed in our best attire, we stood at the front door of Tham's family home, preparing to meet his parents for the first time. Given the unsettling stories I had heard about Tham's parents, my nerves were understandably on edge. My father, attempting to lighten the mood, encouraged us not to be too tense, assuring that Tham's parents were just overly concerned. His supportive pat on the back eased my anxiety slightly. When Tham rang the doorbell, there was no response, causing a momentary panic. Tom rang again, but still, there was silence. Not wanting to create a bad impression, Tom excused himself and entered the house first, leaving my father and me exchanging concerned glances. After what seemed like an eternity, Tom reappeared, looking flustered. Before I could inquire about the delay, he made excuses with a forced smile, promising us they would be ready soon. My father sighed in exasperation, and I couldn't shake the growing worry that this incident might jeopardize our wedding plans. Finally, Tom ushered us inside, where his parents awaited us. However, their demeanor was peculiar. His mother greeted us with a sly grin, while his father seemed disinterested, looking away. Despite the tense atmosphere, I decided to proceed with the introductions. Tom, regaining composure, introduced both my parents and me. Despite the warmth of his thoughtful introduction, his parents sneered, and the atmosphere remained strained. In an awkward turn of events, Tom's mother splashed tea on my father, staining the suit he had meticulously cleaned for the occasion. Shocked, I offered my dad a handkerchief while Tom panickedly tried to wipe off the tea stains. His parents, laughing in response, only fueled Tom's anger. My father, standing up, pointed at them and declared, "Then I'll ruin your company," a tone and statement I had never heard from him before. Taking my hand, he left the house, leaving Tom's parents in the wake of Tom's scolding. Returning to our house with Tom, my father changed clothes, and Tom earnestly apologized for the incident. I could hear my dad's troubled voice during their conversation. Although I was shocked by Tom's parents' actions, I knew they wouldn't be easy to get along with. Seated on the living room sofa, clenching my fists, I replayed the event in my mind, seething at the insult directed at my dad. When my dad and Tom finished changing, Tom immediately apologized to me, almost bowing down, expressing regret for not anticipating such behavior from his parents. His sincerity was evident, and he didn't even ask for forgiveness. Feeling the need to apologize as well, I took Tom's hand as he kneeled on the floor, expressing my regret for suggesting the meeting without fully understanding the situation. Unexpectedly, the situation took a serious turn, and I felt compelled to apologize to my father for the unintended consequences of my thoughtless suggestion. His troubled expression and shrugged shoulders conveyed the difficulty in addressing the situation. Determined to understand the gravity of my dad's threat, I sought clarification. "Dad, was what you said true? Are you really going to ruin their company?" To my question, my dad glanced at Tom and nodded firmly, affirming his intent. My father, the CEO of a renowned local enterprise, revealed that their business was already struggling. As the factory manager and CEO, he had started as a worker in the very factory, sacrificing his dream of becoming a painter to raise me alone after my mother's passing. He worked tirelessly and climbed the corporate ladder through several promotions. Eventually, he took over as the CEO when the former CEO retired. During our recent visit to Tom's family home, we discovered that one of the subsidiaries managed by Tom's father, my father-in-law, belonged to my dad's company. Unfortunately, Tom's parents' prejudices and Tom's mother's premature actions prevented this from being clarified, leading to the present situation. My father explained that his company faced management difficulties, contemplating downsizing without resorting to layoffs. Regret was evident in his words as he considered the impact on his employees. After Tom's serious conversation with my father, he proposed closing down the subsidiary where Tom's parents worked. Concerned about the consequences for Tom's parents, my father questioned if Tom was okay with it. Tom, resolute and having cut ties with his parents, expressed a desire for them to reflect on their actions. Despite the difficulty, he requested permission to get engaged with me. Moved by Tom's earnestness, I also pleaded with my father to allow our engagement. My father, crossing his arms, pondered Tom's words. Despite the recent incident, he eventually gave his approval, setting a condition related to Tom's parents being company executives. My father demanded to know Tom's plan for the employees and made it clear that our marriage would be off if Tom couldn't handle this responsibly. A few days later, Tom presented a plan to my father for his father's company's employees. He had arranged a meeting with my father to discuss possible job placements for all the employees. Tom showed genuine concern for their transition and offered to work for free until they were settled and producing results. He expressed his eagerness to compensate for any shortcomings with his work and salary, and once settled, to re-engage with me. Tom, demonstrating his earnestness, saw himself as partly responsible for his company's collapse and wished to be a positive force in the situation. Upon returning home, I discovered that our marriage would be delayed due to an unavoidable circumstance. When I greeted my father, he expressed, "Welcome back, Ivan. You heard right. I'm sorry for deciding such an important thing on my own, but I thought it wouldn't be fair if I were the only one happy." While he apologized, I seized the opportunity to propose working in the company with Tom, offering to work for free. I insisted that my father should accept Tom's proposal. Despite Tom's attempts to dissuade me, I desperately begged my father, who initially remained silent. After repeated pleas, he uncrossed his arms and quietly nodded. Meanwhile, Tom's parents had yet to apologize. My father seemed to have been waiting for them, but the time had passed. He began preparations to take over Tom's father's company. Time passed, and the day arrived when the company collapsed. Tom's parents summoned us to their home, where a crowd of former employees protested the company's closure. They accused us of being the root of all evil and blamed me for seducing Tom and ingratiating myself with my father. Despite the accusations, Tom attempted to calm the former employees, explaining the situation and offering new job placements. Ignoring his parents' outbursts, Tom apologized for the inconvenience caused and promised to work with dedication. The former employees, reassured by Tom's efforts, began leaving, relieved and grateful. As they departed, my father promised to inform them of the details later. In the aftermath, Tom's parents continued to fuss about their predicament. Tom sighed in exasperation at their blame shifting, expressing concern about losing their house used as collateral. Despite their pleas, Tom's parents were met with indifference as the former employees had already heard the truth from Tom and disregarded the parents' desperate appeals. My father also ignored their words, and the former employees left relieved, leaving Tom's parents to confront the consequences of their actions. "I don't care what you think. You got what you deserved, so it can't be helped. Why don't you learn a little remorse?" My father reprimanded Tom's parents, who seemed oblivious to our scolding. Unable to bear their persistence any longer, I finally lost my patience. "Haven't you just caused trouble for Tom all this time, boasting about being business owners and only caring about titles? Isn't that why this happened?" My words left his parents speechless, seemingly ready to retort, but halted by my father's decisive intervention. He made it clear that he wouldn't allow them to speak further. A business owner is supposed to take responsibility. You should at least complete your final task properly. Left without a response, Tom's parents were scolded collectively and could say nothing more. Leaving them behind, we left the scene. And eventually, Tom's parents lost everything: the company, the house, and the land. They never provided any guarantees to the former employees and evaded responsibility. After losing everything, they reached out to Tom for help. But having cut ties with them, Tom coldly turned them away. Now, they were probably in jail, and we heard nothing from them since. Even if they got out, they still had a debt to the former employees, so the situation remained dire. Afterward, Tom and I quit our jobs and joined my father's company. Living off our savings in the first month, we worked for free as promised. One day, we encountered a former employee of Tom's parents' company at work. Eager to shake our hands at the new workplace, the employee expressed their gratitude to my father for giving them a chance. Thanks to Tom for arranging the job, and also conveyed many thanks to me. Despite not remembering the specific incident, I had apparently helped that person carry materials. After expressing immense gratitude, the former employee left, expressing a desire to keep working hard. Feeling somewhat redeemed by his words, we hurried to my father's office, where he warmly welcomed us. Handing us several thick envelopes, he explained, It's your salaries for the past months. It ended up being multiple envelopes because it couldn't all fit into one. We were stunned, unable to swallow the situation, but my father continued. Your hard work revitalized the team. They constantly expressed their gratitude and concern for you. I couldn't possibly leave such excellent employees unpaid, and our performance has improved significantly. Thank you truly. Hearing this, we hugged each other and cried, moved by the concern shown for us. My father then added something even more wonderful. Tom, I'm impressed with your leadership. If you're okay with my daughter, would you marry her? Overjoyed, Tom replied tearfully, bowing to me and my father. I hugged Tom, crying alongside him. And so we got married. Continuing to work at my father's company, we lived happily every day, gradually becoming more adept at our jobs and contributing more effectively. Our time at the company was approaching a pause as I was about to take maternity leave. My father, Tom, our colleagues, and I were all looking forward to the arrival of our child. Hello, I'm Ingrid, and I'm 27 years old. I was orphaned at a very young age because both my parents passed away in a car crash. They didn't have any family to look after me, so I was put into an orphanage. I was there for about 3 years before my parents adopted me. My adoptive parents turned out to be these billionaires, so I had a pretty rich and fulfilling life after that. They didn't want to make my adoption a big deal, so they kept it hushed up. They wanted to do good without it having been broadcast everywhere. When I turned into an adult and had my own place, the two of them decided that they wanted to expand their business further and took to touring Europe in search of opportunities. It was around this time that I met Patrick, my now ex-husband. We met in college and instantly liked each other. After a couple of conversations, Patrick, a very happy-go-lucky, caring man, made me like him a whole lot more. Our dates led to us becoming an official couple. We had the perfect relationship, although there was one problem. It was no secret that Patrick's family did not like me. The first time I met them, Patrick and I had just graduated college. He waited to introduce me to his parents until we were both well settled in our lives. By that, I mean that we were both working good jobs. Patrick had warned me that his parents tended to be a little judgmental when it came to their children's significant others, and he wanted me to make the best impression I could. I didn't mind, but meeting the parents was nerve-wracking for me. By the time Patrick introduced me to his parents, we had been dating for a good 4 years. In those 4 years, we also got engaged, so I guessed that, in itself, it was going to be a problem for his parents, considering they never even got to know me as his girlfriend. I remember freaking out about it with Patrick the day before we were supposed to meet his parents. They're going to hate me, Patrick. They won't, I promise you. Do you not think that they'll be shocked to find out that we're engaged? Well, yeah, but I don't think it will be that big of a deal. Are you being serious right now? You were scared about introducing me to them because you know how judgy they are, and you think introducing me as your fiancé is not going to make them judge me even more. Look, even if they do, will what they say really matter? It won't to me, but I don't know about you. You always seem so careful about them. I promise you that it won't affect or matter to me at all, Ingrid. All right, if you say so. But do you think maybe we should just not tell them we're engaged, and then, like a month or so later, we should tell them? Will that make you feel any better about this whole thing? Because I have no problem with either of the options. I think we should hide it just in case. I'll do anything to get on that good side. You have nothing to worry about. I'll be there with you no matter what. Thanks, sweetie. The only reason I had been freaking out so much was that whenever I suggested that Patrick tell his parents about me, he would make a whole fuss about them not going to approve of me. Now, at this point, I began to kind of understand why. You see, Patrick's family were pretty rich, and they loved to live lavishly. They wanted that for their children as well, and the only way they accepted their children dating was if they also mingled with people who were as rich or even richer than them. The way I was living back then was by no means rich according to their standards. I hadn't told Patrick about my family because I didn't see the point of it. Plus, by the time I figured out why he was so adamant about not letting me introduce myself to his parents, I felt like it was even more unnecessary for them to know just who my father was. I wanted them to like me for me and not for my money. I naively believed that they would like me that way, but oh boy was I wrong. We decided to meet Patrick's parents at a fine dining restaurant. At that time, Patrick held my hand as we walked in. I wore my engagement ring on my necklace because I wanted to keep it on me without actually drawing any attention to it. When we got to our table, his parents already looked upset. Patrick told me to expect that because they were big sticklers about time. When we had arrived exactly 2 minutes late, well, we were already off to a bad start. His parents gave me a once-over and twisted their faces into disgust. They proceeded to ignore me for a little while as they made conversation with Patrick. I will admit I felt really small in their eyes. The longer they ignored my presence, the stronger my urge grew to leave. I kept my head down for the most part until finally, Patrick drew his parents' attention towards me. "Mom, Dad, you can't just keep talking to me here. This is my wonderful girlfriend, Ingrid." "Oh, hello. It's a pleasure to meet both of you." "Hi, I wish I could say the same." "Mom, what? I'm only speaking the truth. So, Ingrid, I heard you and Patrick met in college. Is that right?" "Yes, we did. We happened to share some classes together." "Ah, and how did you manage to attend this college?" "From what I know, the tuition is pretty high, and it's a pretty hard place to get into." "Dad, that is enough, Patrick. You will not speak to your father that way. He's asking a very valid question, Ingrid. Please answer him." "Well, I got a full ride there. I'm super grateful I got to go there because not only did I get to learn a lot of things, but I also got to meet Patrick, which has been one of the best things that has happened to me. Of course, it's one of the best things that's happened to you. He's loaded, and you need that kind of money. At least you have some brains because your looks aren't all that good. You know what? That's enough. We're leaving." "Come on, Ingrid." Patrick grabbed my hand, and we walked out. I was in shock at the way that his parents had treated me. I couldn't believe that people could be so mean so openly and to the person's face. I was in too much shock to even feel anything. The car ride back home was silent because Patrick was fuming. When we reached home, Patrick made it a point to make sure that I was doing okay. But truthfully, at the moment, I really did not know how to feel. I had dressed up nicely and made sure that I sat properly as well. I didn't order anything expensive, but somehow, without me even saying a word, Paula and Marley made their judgment about me. Patrick didn't speak to his parents for a while after that. They texted him and told him that we had been very disrespectful by walking out on them during lunch. Patrick didn't respond to that and only texted them about a month later to tell them that he had gotten engaged. His parents weren't too happy about it, but Patrick threatened them with no contact if they said or did anything against me. They offered to pay for our wedding on the condition that they got to make all the decisions regarding it. Obviously, neither Patrick nor I wanted that, so we decided to do the next best thing, elope. My parents were in Europe, and they knew about me eloping. They were just happy that I was happy. And they did send Patrick and me a gift. Patrick did raise his brows at how they sent us a pretty expensive painting as a gift. But I just brushed it off as them having enough money to spend it on that. After getting married, we next met Paula and Marley at a party that they had hosted. They invited us to celebrate their anniversary. Truth be told, I was actually pretty happy that they had invited me despite the dislike they held for me. When we got there, I was ignored by everyone. If you think being ignored by 2 people was embarrassing, being ignored by about 30 people was even worse. I hung by Patrick's side for the most part, but nobody even tried to talk to me. If I ever did try to speak and make conversation, people would just either look me up and down and walk away, or they would continue talking to Patrick as if I never said anything. By the end of the night, I was in tears. I was humiliated and downright disgusted by the behavior that everyone was showing. The crowd had asked Paula and Marley to make a speech at the end of the night, and they got up to make one. By this time, I was tired and I wanted to go home, but in their speech, they began by talking about how grateful they were to have almost everyone in the room in their lives. That was only the first jab that they threw at me. They kept making many more, which the guests kept laughing at. At some point, I just got up and walked out. I ordered an Uber and went back home. I cried the entire way back home and up until Patrick got back home. When he got back, he seemed upset and angry. Why did you walk out like that? Do you know how embarrassing that was for me? What? What are you talking about? Don't play dumb with me right now, Ingrid. I had to endure my parents yelling at me and a lot of the guests pitying me for being with you. Are you serious? What about how embarrassing it was for me? Oh, come on, Ingrid. You could deal with it for one night. It was my parents' anniversary, for God's sake. I was ignored by everyone, and your parents chose to make even more fun of me in their toast. How do you possibly expect me to be okay with something like that? I'm not saying what they did was right, but you could have just lived through it. I would have spoken to them about it after. What would that have done for me? I don't like being put in positions where I'm only being humiliated. Everyone was laughing at me. You've never been in that position before, so it's easy for you to talk about this like it's no big deal. My parents expect an apology from you. I want one too. I'm afraid that I won't be doing that. I'll only do that if they give me one too. As for your apology, I see no reason for apologizing to you. You always stood up for me. I don't see why this is any different. This is very different because, unlike before, you humiliated my family in front of all our guests, and your parents humiliated me, your wife, in front of all their guests. Maybe my parents were right about you. You're impossible. With that, Patrick went to sleep in the guest bedroom. I couldn't understand why he had a sudden change of behavior. Was it really that bad for him after I walked out? He was always the first person to stand up for me, especially considering the fact that I was usually bored with whatever his parents had to say about me. For me to walk out should have been the biggest signifier of just how bad they made me feel. Yet Patrick didn't seem to care about that. Patrick didn't talk to me for the next week. I also got a lot of texts from his parents, calling me ungrateful and an embarrassment. I tried to talk to Patrick, but he refused to. Eventually, I decided to give in and apologize to both him and his parents. Even that felt humiliating, but I was willing to go through it because I loved Patrick, and I didn't want this to be the hill I died on. Things after that only got worse for me. Patrick's parents retired and spent a lot of their time hosting family dinners. They hosted it once a week, and Patrick was always invited. The first time they hosted it, Patrick brought me along with him to their house. As soon as I stepped in, the atmosphere in the room got awkward. Paula was busy getting ready, so she didn't see me immediately, but Marley and the rest of Patrick's siblings awkwardly glanced at me. They didn't talk to me, and Patrick left me to stand by myself while he caught up with the rest of his family. When Paula came downstairs, she saw me and practically flew over to me in rage. "What are you doing here?" "Excuse me?" "No, I will not excuse you. What are you doing in my house right now?" "Well, you invited us for dinner." "Wrong. I invited Patrick because it's a family dinner. I'm Patrick's wife, so I'm a part of this family, am I not?" "Absolutely not. An orphan like you deserves no space in this family." "What? You thought you could hide the detail from us. We do background checks on our children's spouses, and you are not in my son's league whatsoever. I will never accept you here." "Why not? That can't be the only thing that determines whether I get to be a part of your family. You're ugly and poor. You'd never fit into our elite circles. I never want to see you again." "Why are you being so superficial? Are you scared that I'll damage your reputation just by existing? Does the fact that I bring your son happiness not satisfy you? If happiness brought in money, a lot of people would be billionaires. This is exactly why you'd never fit in with us. Or maybe I'll just never be as superficial as the rest of you because I value who a person actually is. You never even took the chance to get to know me before casting your judgments on me. I'm glad I don't fit in with you, Ingrid. That's enough. Here's some money. Get yourself an Uber and leave. I stared at Patrick in shock as he held out the money. He shoved the money in my hands and turned back around towards his mother. She smirked at me. I felt tears spring into my eyes as I turned back around and walked out. I was once again crying in the Uber. I didn't understand why Patrick had changed so drastically. Was this his way of making up to his parents after the party? Whatever it was, I was hurt and angry at him. He was okay with his parents using my past as an insult and defending them instead of me, like he usually did. I wanted to yell and scream, but I knew that would only project a worse image of me and prove them right, which is why I walked away. I tried to think if anything I said was out of line, but I really did not see anything wrong. I was merely standing up for myself, calmly might I add. After Patrick came back home, he went back to not talking to me. My heart was breaking, and I felt so alone. I knew that he expected another apology, but I couldn't bring myself to do it like the last time. Paula had blatantly insulted me in the worst way, and Patrick was angry at me for it. If anything, I expected an apology from him. For the next 2 weeks, Patrick and I didn't speak to each other. It was hard at first, but I got used to it. Eventually, the dinners his family hosted still happened, and about once a week, I was all alone at home, which I truthfully did not mind. On one of those nights, my parents video called me. Hey, honey. Hey, sweetie. How's it going? Hey, Dad. Hey, Mom. Things are not good. Why? What's wrong, sweetie? If you need help with anything, feel free to ask us. I don't think this is something you guys would be able to help me out with, but thanks for the offer. Where's Patrick? Is he not helping? That's the thing. He's part of the problem. Huh? Sweetie, could you be a little more clear about what the problem is? Well, his parents are pretty wealthy and also very snobby. Oh, I hate those kinds of people. Tell me about it. Anyways, they thought that I was some poor girl who could never live up to their standards and fit into their elite circles. So they took it upon themselves to humiliate me every time that I met them. What the hell? Oh yeah, and the last time I went over, Patrick's mom decided calling me an orphan was a good insult. Oh, that woman. I'm going to claw her face off. How dare she call my precious child an orphan? Do they not know about us? And what the hell has Patrick been doing in all this? I didn't tell them about you guys because I knew that their opinion of me would change if they knew. And I wanted them to like me for who I was and not for my wealth. As for Patrick, he's siding with them. He thinks that I was disrespectful when I stood up for myself. Honey, are you sure this is the man you want to be with? I love him a lot, but this is not how I want it to be. We haven't been speaking to each other for the last 2 weeks, and I'm surprisingly okay with that. All right, sweetie. I'll get you in touch with one of my friends over there. As for your worry about us not being able to help you out, I think we might actually be able to help you get a little sweet revenge. Huh? What do you mean? Your dad and I are coming there next week. We wanted to take you and Patrick on a vacation, but now we can just take you. More things for us to do together, I guess. Really? Oh my God, I'm so excited to finally get to see the two of you in person. Again, that was a real pick-me-up. Finally, I felt happy after so long. The three of us continued to talk for a little while after that. Dad elaborated on his plan to help me. After a little while, he asked me where these dinners of theirs were being held. And as far as I knew, they took turns hosting in their house and at restaurants. Conveniently, the week that my parents were coming, the dinner was going to happen in a restaurant. I needed to get information on where exactly this dinner was going to be held so I could provide my parents with the location. Thankfully, I had Patrick's email logged into my phone. And if there was one thing I knew about Paula and Marley, it was that they loved to email everyone everything. It wasn't that hard to get the location, and I gave it to my parents. At the same time, my mom's lawyer friend contacted me, and we got started on the process of filing for divorce. My parents landed in the States and decided to check into their hotel, where I met them. We had lunch together, and then the two of them sent me on my way for a spa day that they entirely paid for because they thought I deserved it while they got ready to get revenge on my in-laws. My parents walked into the restaurant that Patrick and his family were at. According to Dad, when they approached the table, Marley and Paula began to murmur among themselves as they recognized just who he was. Mom told me that this was how the conversation went. "Hello? Oh my gosh, Mr. Burns. What brings you here? Oh wow, I just happened to see some familiar faces, and I figured that I could drop in and probably dine with you." Familiar faces? Who are you speaking about, Mr. Burns? Well, I see Patrick. Me? Well, hello. A pleasure to meet you. You, my daughter, has spoken a lot about you. But speaking of my daughter, where is she? Your daughter? I'm afraid you're mistaken. I don't think she's here, but she should be, right? I'm sorry, Mr. Burns, but we didn't even know that you had a daughter. Of course I do. And she's married to Patrick. What? I'm sorry, but I think you're mistaken. Yes, his wife's name is Ingrid, and she was an orphan. Yes, I do know that, and that is why we adopted her. Excuse me? You're her dad? Yes, and from what I see, she isn't here. She's been telling me that there has been some problems with her in-laws, but I see what the problem was. It was you. No, she was the one who hid this huge thing from us. If we knew, you would have treated her better. She didn't want you to treat her nicely because of her background. Oh well, she did ask me to hand this over to Patrick. My dad handed Patrick the divorce papers and walked out. After that, it only took a couple of phone calls for a lot of investors to pull away from Marley's business. They were quickly crashing, and nothing was more satisfying than watching them crumble down to the levels that they made fun of. I got a lot of texts from all Patrick's family, calling me a bunch of nasty names while some of them begged me to talk to my dad and reverse what he had done. Patrick thankfully signed the divorce papers without any hassle. My parents and I went on a long vacation after that. I had the time of my life, and I slowly began to heal. Yeah, it hurt that I had lost the love of my life, but I also learned just how important it is to stand up for myself. I'm forever grateful to my parents for everything they've done for me, and I can't wait to see what else life has to offer me.
Building your own home is a big achievement in life. Let me tell you about how my marriage started to fall apart just after we reached this peak of happiness. My name is Abigail, and I'm 30 years old. My family includes my husband Gary, who is 35, and our 3-year-old daughter Sarah. We decided to build our dream home. You might think everything was smooth sailing and filled with happiness. That's what most people would assume. But for me, it's quite the opposite. Lately, with our new house being built and problems with my in-laws, I've been endlessly worried. The first sign of trouble in our relationship came when we left Sarah at my in-laws' place. Both my husband and I work, so we rarely have any free time. On weekdays, we spend our weekends searching for the right materials and discussing the design of our house. When we took Sarah with us, she would often get bored and restless, so we usually left her with my parents who live close by. But one morning, my father fell and had to see the doctor, so he couldn't watch Sarah. I thought we should cancel our plans for the day. However, Gary suggested, why not leave her at my parents' house? Honestly, I don't have a good relationship with my in-laws. They don't think they need to respect their son's wife. To them, since I'm married into the family, they can say whatever they want. What century are they living in? I felt uncomfortable asking them to babysit a 3-year-old, but if we postponed our plans, it would delay finishing our house. Despite my doubts, we decided to leave Sarah with my in-laws for the day. After we finished our tasks, we stopped at a store and bought some expensive pastries as a thank you gift, then went straight to my in-laws' house. When we arrived that evening, maybe because of the gift, they seemed to be in a good mood. After thanking my mother-in-law and father-in-law, on our way home, Sarah asked, "Where's Grandpa and Grandma's room in our new house?" "Sweetie, what do you mean? Did Grandpa and Grandma ask you that? What did you tell them?" I asked. "I told them I didn't know," she replied, then went back to talking with her stuffed penguin she calls my parents. Granddad and Granny, so Grandpa and Grandma would refer to Gary's parents. Perhaps they were wondering if there's a guest room for them in our new house. At least, that's what I thought back then. After that day, my in-laws started visiting frequently, especially in the evenings on weekdays or holidays when we were home. Right now, we're living in a small, older apartment to save money for our house. Whenever my in-laws came over, they would immediately sit down on our dining chairs or sofa, asking to see the blueprints and paperwork for our house that was still being built. Before I could say anything, Gary would eagerly show them everything, explaining in detail. Why does he show them every time? It's already exhausting. They visited so often that my mother-in-law bombarded me with questions. It felt like I was being interrogated in a congressional hearing. It wasn't my husband in the hot seat, but me. I could almost hear the debate moderator saying, "Mil, you may speak." She would scrutinize the blueprint, pointing out flaws in the kitchen's layout and insisting we needed more guest rooms. She'd argue about the need for spare space and even joke about the declining birth rate, thankfully not seriously asking for my thoughts on it. Then it was my turn to respond. "Ms. Abigail, I'd say based on our discussions with my husband and the construction plans we've already set in motion, it's too late to change the layout." But my frustration grew as more questions followed about furniture and appliances. My mother-in-law claims to be a home expert. I've visited many friends' homes and seen different room setups. With that experience, I can easily recognize comfortable rooms and quality furniture. "This house and these rooms don't feel right, they have bad vibes, so things won't go smoothly," she declared with expert emphasis. It was a bit much, considering she's just my mother-in-law. She was so irritating that I jokingly suggested, "What if we turn it into a multi-generational home and split the costs 50-50ths? But my in-laws didn't find it funny. "Are you asking us for money, you ungrateful child? A multi-generational home? I hate the idea of living so formally and reserved." That day they left early. Good riddance, you're not my real parents, and I don't owe you any respect. Instead of parents, they're more like guardians. Later that night, after putting our daughter to bed, my husband came to me looking frustrated. "Mom and Dad mean well, so don't be so distant with them." Cold? I didn't mean to come off that way, but aren't your parents being a bit rude? They constantly interfere with our decisions about our home. It's like they always look down on me, see me just as their daughter-in-law. That's just how parents are. It feels disrespectful to dismiss their advice like that. Don't you understand how that feels? Take a moment to think about it calmly. From then on, my husband turned away and didn't speak to me. I know they're your parents, but we're a separate household, and they haven't given us any financial support. They don't contribute financially but still have a lot to say. Isn't that unfair? My husband told me to calm down, but instead of cooling off, I was boiling with anger over the injustice, which made it hard to sleep. After some ups and downs, our house was finally finished. Just as our family was happily moving in, something unexpected happened. My parents are moving in with us starting today. Dad can take the bigger room upstairs and Mom will be fine in the smaller one. Wait a minute. Hold on. Where is this coming from? We agreed that one of the upstairs rooms would be for Sarah. I never heard anything about this. Plus, what if your parents decide they don't like the rooms? They might not say anything, but they've already seen them. Your parents checked out the rooms the day before we did. Wait, they saw the house before us? Yeah, they wanted to see it, so I gave them my key. It's not a big deal, my husband replied, clearly annoyed as he returned to working on the half-done TV cables. Not a big deal? Well, it is now. It's become a really big deal. I didn't want to see my husband's face, so I left the kitchen where I was packing and went upstairs. I locked myself in the room, trying to clear my head amidst the mix of anger and confusion. Thankfully, I had already dropped Sarah off at daycare, giving me some space and time to think amidst all the unpacking. The sudden news about living with my in-laws made me completely fed up with both my husband and his parents. I didn't want to spend another moment with them, but we had just invested significantly in this house. I needed to calm down and think rationally. I had to figure out what needed to be said and what didn't for the sake of my daughter and myself. I stayed in my room, deep in thought, waiting for my in-laws to arrive as my husband had mentioned they would be coming in the afternoon with a truck full of their belongings. You could at least greet us. Honestly, such rude people. Oh my, nothing's unpacked yet? You're so slow. I overheard my in-laws complain as they made themselves at home downstairs. I decided to go downstairs and face them at the entrance. Excuse me, but I wasn't informed about this living arrangement, I said, my voice unexpectedly cold. My father-in-law appeared annoyed and shot back, I told Gary, that should be enough. No, it's not. This morning was the first I heard about your plan to move in from Gary. I have no intention of living with you, especially after such disrespect. What? Gary agreed to it. You think you can defy your husband like that? Such a presumptuous daughter-in-law. If you don't like it, maybe you should leave. This is hopeless. We've always struggled to communicate properly with them. As I pondered my next words, my husband rushed over. What's going on, Abigail? Why are you arguing with my parents? This isn't just an argument. I'm being criticized simply for being your daughter-in-law, and now you're blaming me too. I realized once again Gary was just like his father, like son. Gary, I can't possibly live with your parents. Why not? You're making this difficult for me. As your wife, I'm an individual person. You can't force me to obey. Upon hearing our exchange, Gary's father exclaimed, "We don't need such a daughter-in-law in our home." Then Gary agreed, "Maybe you're right. If she can't respect my parents, maybe we should divorce." I had been waiting for this. "All right, let's get a divorce then," I stated clearly. My husband was the one who asked for divorce, and I, the wife, just agreed to what he wanted. With hope that my phone in my pocket would record our entire conversation properly, I continued, "Since we'll be strangers now, please pay me back the $350,000 I loaned you for this house's construction." His parents gasped in shock, looking completely baffled. Gary's face turned pale as he stared at me. I calmly clarified to his stunned parents, "There seems to be some confusion. Gary didn't contribute a single cent to buying this house. I used my savings because he didn't have any savings. We both worked and split our living expenses equally. The plan was to save individually, but he spent his money instead of saving." "Abigail, that's enough," Gary interjected. "It's true. Yet when we bought the house, Gary insisted it be in his name. That's why I loaned him the money, and we have a written agreement to prove it." "No way," Gary exclaimed. Ignoring their disbelief, I quickly packed essentials, my daughter's toys and clothes, into suitcases and duffel bags. I held her favorite stuffed penguin close. Loading everything into my compact car, I drove away, saying goodbye to the house we had briefly called home. After picking up my daughter from daycare, we headed to my parents' home in Nebraska. My parents, dressed casually, were surprised to see me arrive with so much luggage. "This is sudden, and I know it might be inconvenient. If it's too much trouble, I can stay at a motel," I offered hesitantly. They quickly assured me it was fine. Later, I found out they had been worried I might harm my daughter or myself, though I had sworn to protect her no matter what. I shared the whole story with them, explaining my decision to divorce Gary and my determination to raise our daughter alone. They promised full support and suggested I stay with them for a while, which was a great relief. Since I was working that night, I documented everything that had happened between Gary, his parents, and me. I saved voice recordings of our conversations on my computer and external drive. Armed with this evidence, I visited several law firms on my days off until I found a trustworthy lawyer and officially hired them. A week flew by in the hustle of everyday life since I left our new house. That day, after finishing work and leaving the office, I was surprised to find someone waiting for me. It was my husband, or rather ex-husband, though technically still my husband on paper until the divorce was finalized. I had no intention of speaking with him, but the fear of potential aggression kept me on edge. "So I thought we should go somewhere public," he suggested, and we entered a coffee shop together. I made sure to activate the recording function on my phone, just in case. Trying to remain calm, I asked, "Do you have something to discuss?" "Yes, about the house. I'll transfer it to you and change the name on the deed. Can we consider the money issue settled?" "I'm sorry, but I can't live in that house anymore, especially after your parents were there before us." "Why worry about such details?" "It's not a small thing for me, so the answer is no," I said firmly, taking a sip of my coffee as I observed my ex-husband closely. His hair was messy, sticking out in places, and he had some stubble on his chin. Despite wearing a suit, his shirt was wrinkled, as if it hadn't been ironed or cleaned properly. I wondered about the kind of life he was leading, but he looked worn out. "Please, Abigail, I can't repay such a large sum of money that easily." "You knew it was a significant amount when you borrowed it, didn't you?" "I suggested we put both our names on the house, or even just mine, but you insisted it be in your name, claiming it was my house." "I thought I was the homeowner. I never really intended to get a divorce. I thought you knew I was just bluffing." "I was serious. I'm done with you, and I'm definitely getting a divorce. It's not just about your lack of responsibility. I can't handle your rude parents either." "But I have to go. Sarah is waiting for me." "Wait, I'm taking Sarah with me." Fear gripped me at my ex-husband's words. When I returned to my parents' house, I asked them to be cautious, afraid he might try to take Sarah by force. A few days after my ex-husband's visit, I received word that my in-laws were at Sarah's daycare. I left work early and hurried to the daycare. Fortunately, I had informed them beforehand, so they had my in-laws waiting in a separate room where they couldn't see Sarah. As soon as I entered the room with my in-laws, they started shouting at me. "Give us our granddaughter back, you gold-digging thief." "What do you mean, thief? I haven't stolen anything." "If you're not a thief, then you must be a con artist. You must have done something shady to get that kind of money at your age. It doesn't make sense for you to have so much money." "No, all the money I lent to Gary was mine. It's all from my hard work, my savings, and the gift money from my parents and grandmother." "What gift money?" "Every year, my parents gifted me a certain amount to avoid taxes, which was directly deposited into my account. Along with money from selling some stocks and my savings, that's where it all came from. So all that money really was yours. Didn't you give any money as a gift to Gary? You can still make gifts, you know. My father-in-law grunted and fell silent. They like to spend on expensive things and show off, enjoying luxury above all. As a regular working-class family without passive income, it's clear they probably don't have much in savings. They would never have thought to give money like my parents did. I'm sorry, but I'm divorcing Gary. I'll be taking custody of Sarah. Please don't come to the daycare anymore. With that, I quickly got Sarah into the car and drove straight to my parents' home. Despite my warnings, Gary and my in-laws continued to show up several times after that. Each time, I tried to stay calm and send them away. However, they often grabbed my arm or shouted hurtful things at me. After I left our new home, I meticulously recorded everything on my phone. About a month later, I sent a letter through my lawyer demanding repayment of debts and a divorce agreement. My ex-husband agreed in principle, but he contested custody of Sarah. However, when I mentioned alimony, his demeanor changed drastically. He looked pale and became much quieter. Armed with ample evidence against him and knowing he had no savings, I pursued my case diligently. It took some time, but I eventually won custody of Sarah, reclaimed the money I had loaned to my ex-husband, and finalized the divorce. Retrieving all the debt repayments from him took longer than expected, mainly because the sale of our new house encountered difficulties initially. I had fought against Gary and his parents moving into the new house, but they couldn't afford the $350,000. Gary lacked savings, and even if his parents sold their old home, it wouldn't cover the cost. Eventually, they had to list the new house for less than they bought it for. After several price drops, they finally found a buyer. The difference between the buying and selling prices, along with real estate commissions, was borrowed from the bank by my ex-husband. Losing the house and burdened with debt, my ex-husband ended up moving back in with his parents into their old run-down house. To make matters worse, Gary's divorced sister also moved back in with her 2 teenage sons. Now 6 people were squeezed into a small old home. It quickly gained a reputation in the neighborhood for constant arguments and tension. Fortunately, that family no longer bothered us. With Gary struggling to afford child support, it's no surprise he's kept a low profile. 4 years have passed since then, and my daughter Sarah is now in 2nd grade. We're renting a place near my parents' home, and on days when I'm late from work, they look after Sarah. Despite the challenges, we're managing well and enjoying our time together. I had thought I might stay single and continue living like this forever, but recently I've started dating someone. He's a 36-year-old man who was previously married and has a daughter in 1st grade. We got to know each other through school drop-offs and pickups, and he eventually expressed his feelings for me. Lately, we've been going out together with our daughters. The other day, Sarah casually mentioned, if we ever build a house, it'd be nice if all 4 of us had our own rooms, and maybe we could get a dog. My heart skipped a beat. In fact, he had proposed to me not long ago. Both of us have daughters, and they come first in our decisions, so I haven't given him a definite answer yet. But now, I've made up my mind. I hugged Sarah tightly and said, "That sounds wonderful. I'd love to build a new home. This time, we'll all discuss it together as a family and make sure it's a place where everyone can be happy."